whenever. We are going to jump into a couple drafts here, and I am here with my former coworker, data scientist Matt Savoca. I have not talked with Matt in like a year and a half. We haven't
Way too
we haven't
long.
done. We used to do pretty regular content. I mean, during NFL season at Stochastic, we did showdown content together for a while. It was a lot of fun. So I can't believe it has been this long since I've done any kind of content with Matt. Really excited to have Matt on the stream. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm fantastic, man. So happy to see the flannel verse off and running the way it is. Obviously we had so much fun doing so many of those live before lock shows, and you've been just the oldest man to do the most best ball streams, and so I'm just kind of happy to be a part of history at this point. But it's gonna be a lot of fun, and this is actually my first live draft of this season, so I'm thrilled to be here, man.
Have you done a lot of drafts outside of live streaming?
I would say my volume is a little bit down, but I think I'm going to ramp up in the summer. I think that was kind of a strategic choice, and
Yeah.
I can maybe get into that over the hours that we're here. I was someone who like drafted the very first off-season draft available, like in January. I was always jumping on those, even back to the days of MFL 10s and draft.
Oh wow.
And this was the first year where I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna proverbial look away from the chessboard for a second, for the first time in a long time, and we'll see how it goes this year.
I think that's sharp. I'm obviously doing a lot of drafts right now, largely for content. I do think it is worthwhile to get some reps in. So if I definitely think that you're sharp to make that decision to hold off on a lot of your drafts. But I would recommend doing like the occasional puppy here and there just to get a grasp of the landscape would be my only
I don't know,
recommendation.
man. The puppies can be wild
That is
because
true. It is a
people
little bit
start
of a
going
different
off the
world.
rails with
Yeah.
those $5 drafts. But no, point well taken. Absolutely. If you're not getting reps in before August, you're also get lost in the hype machine. So you're absolutely right. It's all a balance.
Yeah, exactly. It's if I were not doing content, I would probably be backloading my BBMs at the very least as well. So definitely think that is a sharp move. I just learned just before we started that Matt is working on a tool, and you have a version of the tool available, and I'm going to pull it up here, Matt, and we can talk about it a little bit. We're not going to use it on the stream today just because I was not prepared to do so. Maybe you can come back on sometime. We can take a look at it another time.
Perfect.
Would love to have you back. But for today, we're not going to look at. We're just going to we're not going to use it. We're just going to take a look at Matt's new tool, and you can find this at scrolltheFdown.life. F just
That's right.
just the left.
I mean, that's kind of like
scrolltheFdown.life.
well, first of all, it's the cheapest name available. So, I
Sure,
literally just filtered by like under $3, and there it was. But yeah, it kind of goes into like, I wouldn't say that I've become a little bit of a football statistical nihilist over the last 6 to 10 months, but I do have to say that my appreciation for the variance of fantasy football has really started to change, especially as I started to dig into simulation-based processes. If you hear people talking about creating their own projections, I'm not the best person to do that. There are people around the industry who are just absurdly good at statting out players, statting out teams, and we know how good, even just Vegas is at getting team points and team totals and team wins. And so at this point in my best ball life, I wanted to kind of create a tool that used our knowledge of historical data, the way the NFL continues to change over time, and the way that ADP continues to get sharper and sharper in these drafts overall, and use that historical data to basically just, for lack of a better phrase, just like jiggle the magic 8-ball and then create rankings that are plausible, reasonable, but different enough from the field so that once I get to my later stages, hopefully I've made a valid lineup. I've made a valid roster. It's not off the rails in the sense that like I only took one of a certain position, but it's different enough from the field that I don't have to like risk it all with some 18th round pick that no one else took to have differentiation in these finals. Does that make sense at all?
So this tool will create rankings for you on the spot. So like if I go through it and adjust kind of these settings, and I click simulate, it's going to spit out a new set of rankings that you can then upload to Underdog. Is that correct?
Exactly right. That's it in a nutshell. When you click that browse button at the top, the idea is that you would upload the rankings file that you download from the BBM rankings page over at Underdog. And then The players to rank, pretty obvious there. I usually pump that to 300. Number of seasons to simulate. The more seasons you simulate, obviously, the longer it's going to take. Also, more interestingly, the more it will converge towards ADP, because
Sure.
average draft position over time is pretty sharp. You'll see some variance even if you pumped it all the way to something like 250, but I actually like to bring it down to something like 5 to 30 to get that variance. Again, there's a reason it's set at 25, because I like to live on the edge, whereas I might recommend the user do a little bit differently. And then here in the draft information, we're not going to touch that. That's more for if you're using a site other than DraftKings. Underdog, excuse me. If you were using DraftKings or Drafters or something like that, a super flex draft, we're starting to build in the functionality there as well. And then this is more about differentiation in the tournaments you're playing, the ability to boost a tight end. I saw in one of your previous streams there was a debate started in your chat about the difference between tight end value versus quarterback value.
Sure.
We can get into that at some point during our drafts today, but I personally bring that down to 0 because I'm interested in total points. And in terms of spike weeks versus usable weeks, this is my attempt to create some form of expected value and spike value for players. And so, without getting too far into the details, I want to measure the ability for a player to be usable in the sense that he came close to, if not was, the top player in the flex pool or the quarterback pool, or had a week defining type of score. Because both of those honestly are very, very helpful in best ball rosters. As much as we value the spike week, we can't really know which one of those usable weeks are going to turn into spike weeks. We just know if we capture usable weeks, some of them will turn into those DFS week defining types of scores. So I usually actually pumped it down to close to 0. And then finally, I like to pump the sim weight close to 100 all the way to the right personally. But again, your mileage may vary. This thing's going to break in 5 seconds. You can check it out at scrollthefdown.life. And what it'll help us do if we go through that whole process is create brand new underdog rankings that we can bring up in our drafts. And it helps me get uncomfortable from a math related way. Like, it is very, very hard to see Jahmyr Gibbs as your number 1 running back, because we know what that is compared to draft position. And I'm not saying you have to take him number 1 if the simulations pop it out that way, but it is a great reminder about how little we know at this point, even as we get sharper and sharper. And one thing I want to add to that, the reason I use capturing the total number of usable weeks as a proxy for expected value is because I do think that players who are good over the course of the season tend to be the players we need in week 17. Obviously there's going to be the Kyron Williams and the Puka Nakuas that come out of nowhere in week 18. And this tool isn't really going to be the best at finding those late round picks, but it will help you with situations where you've already captured so much of the usability that you can capture spike weeks within that team already. I know ETR has been publishing work about teams with week 17 correlations right now have been performing better prior to week 17. And I know it's kind of a mystery to why that might be happening. My answer might be good players stay good. Not good drafters stay good. Good players that were getting people to the finals stayed good in week 17. So the good drafters drafted good players. Hence my nihilism, draft good players on good teams. All we have to do, Neil, is draft the best players.
That seems about right. Yeah, that has been my conclusion also. We just got to draft the best players. Really easy to do. As Thaddeus says, get your guys. And my guys are, of course, the best players. So that is the plan. All right. Seems cool. This seems like really interesting. So from what I'm understanding, you want to use this tool as a more as like an information. Like you're not spitting out these rankings and then just using like drafting based on these rankings. Generally, you're using the rankings sort of as a reminder that like there are simulations where Jahmyr Gibbs ends up as your running back 1 on the season, or Jonathan Taylor, whatever, or like, where here's one that I would love. Dontavian Wicks is the wide receiver 1 on the Packers. There are going to be seasons where that happens. This is going to give you rankings that are not necessarily your it's going to give you new rankings every single time you run
Mhm.
this tool. So you don't want to just like use this, like, okay, this is correct. These are the rankings you want to use. Like you said, you're not trying to just like make the best rankings, make the best projections. You're trying to use a tool that maybe like maybe you want to run this before every draft, so that every draft you're kind of prioritizing players a little bit differently. Would you say that that's correct? Like you don't want to just like run this once and then use this for 150 drafts. You would be more inclined to run this before each draft if you're going to do 150, because then you're going to
Correct.
prioritize different players across those drafts.
Correct. I don't think there is a wrong way to do it. The way you first described sounds extremely risky, though. Probably closest to wrong.
Yep.
But again, tangent. But I do think there might be some plus EV in coalescing around certain players in one tournament and then turning that off for a different tournament. That's a different conversation for a different day. But you're precisely right. It's really about using this as an exercise to understand, even in the early rounds, where it feels very wrong to pick a second round player at first round ADP or a third round player at second round ADP. In terms of usable weeks, in terms of spike weeks, we're really talking about minutia. We're talking about one expected usable week more, one spike week more. And, this has also helped me really realize that I don't think the wide receivers as a cohort are overvalued, at least by that much. I know that there's been some conflicting research there overall, but I really see usable weeks not just winning when you compare something like wide receiver 8 to running back 8, but even when we look at something like wide receiver 40 to running back 15, which is a reasonable comparison we get into in these drafts. There's a discrepancy of one expected usable week between those two positional cohorts. So get your guy, as we were talking about earlier. Back to nihilism. Get the best players on the best team. You want to draft, buddy?
Yeah, let's jump into draft. Sabatho asks, does this output include the season projections or only the ranking CSV?
It does include the projection in terms of points per game, and it will also have a ceiling points per game, which I believe, I got to look at the code, I think it's the 75th percentile when you look at all of their simulated games.
Okay. Yeah, just play around. Something to play around with for now. Sounds like Matt is putting a lot of thought in it. This is all Sims based also, so typically, the players that are likely to do well are going to end up, projecting better in general. All right, we're going to jump into a draft. So if you want to draft with us, get in now. I'm getting in.
Let's do this.
Hell yeah. We are only 4 in, so if anybody wants to draft with us, you should have your opportunity now.
Let's go, Flannelverse. Let's get in here. Oh, I just see Ramondre. We got a little bit of news to talk about as we wait, though.
What is the news?
We got Ramondre Stevenson with pretty solid extension for running backs.
Ooh.
Schefter saying $17 million guaranteed.
Damn.
4 seasons.
For a running back.
They say 4-year extension. I just always say they'll probably be able to get out of it next year somehow.
Right. Yeah. That is, it's not. Do you think that's usable news? Is that something that we can factor in? Like, does that make you like Ramondre better?
I only like him in the sense that I'm sure now that the team likes him more than Gibson. And we're still talking about a starting running back, which is good. We're still talking about a team projected for the least amount of points in the NFL.
True. I think that is exactly what I was going to say is it helps, at least in the sense, as you said, because a lot of us, we have had the conversation of are we sure Ramondre is going to be is he better than Antonio Gibson? Are we sure he has a stranglehold on that RB1 job? Could Antonio Gibson steal that from him? This does make it more difficult, I would say, for Antonio Gibson to steal that from Ramondre Stevenson, because that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. And it all goes out the window come December when half the starting running backs are injured, and we saw it with the Patriots, literally with Zeke Elliott last year, and he was leading the team in targets. So while I do think Ramondre Stevenson is probably the most explosive skill player, most reliable skill player on that team right now, and probably the only one I want, how many touchdowns they're really scoring with some combo of Brissett and Drake May, unless the two of them outperform expectation.
Yeah, right. We're not expecting a ton. A lot of people are making the bet on the Patriots, taking a step forward. We should make our pick. Do you have a particular preference here? Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown?
I would go with Jamar personally.
Yep. I like that call. I like Jamar quite a bit this year. I just think that offense is ready to take a step forward. I think with no injuries, setbacks this year, I would hope.
Yeah, and it's no, we're not scoffing at the talent of Amon Ra or Justin Jefferson, but again, we can just use the tiebreaker here. We know wide receivers are a great first round bet. We know at the top of drafts it's hard to get these players, and Cincinnati's projected to score the most points out of that group. I guess Detroit is also neck and neck with them depending on where you look. So, but
yeah,
nonetheless.
Also more, maybe that's not true. I was going to say more competition in Detroit, but that's, I mean, T. Higgins is probably pretty similar competition that we have for Jamar Chase. But yeah, they're just, I'm expecting that. I think that offense has really huge potential for Cincinnati. So I'm pretty in on Jamar Chase this year. I have well over 8% of Jamar Chase currently. I'm mid-teen, somewhere in that range. Oh, no, actually, that's not true. I was there. Actually, I just looked at this the other day, and I was down to 7% Jamar Chase, despite having him as my 4th overall player the entire year. So I had him ahead of ADP for a while. I am down to just 7% because I just have not been getting a ton of other picks. So happy to get
right. It's like an honor to get up there and get these players. So you might as well just take those high ADP players when you have a chance.
Exactly.
And just kind of to touch back on the Sims, when you're talking about usable weeks for wide receiver 3 versus wide receiver 4, 9.0 versus 8.9, where we are in the nitty gritty. We just don't know enough.
Yep, exactly right. I see a lot of people that I know in this draft with us. Now, first of all, a few people in chat. Jeremy says that he has pick 5. Who Hames has pick 10. So those guys are with us. We also have, so this is John Sarabian from Rumpier Sports is in here with us. Chris Ford is in here with us. Humble Legend is somebody who drafts in our streams a lot. I don't think he actually comes and chats with us, but I know the name. And then Daniel or David Zach, one of the Zachs. Sharp. There are 2 really sharp best ball players with the last name Zach, with the first name that starts with D, and I forget which one is which. One of them is a big poker player. The other one just a fantasy football guy. But one of them is in the draft with the username Born Loser. Anybody else here? Absolute Sauce in here also. That would be the number 2 hole. All right, we are coming up with the next pick.
Here we go.
So we have Chase. No real correlations here. Do you have anybody that you like?
I do actually like Saquon Barkley this year.
No.
I do think there's a possibility that they move away from the quarterback position as the only thing at the goal line, especially with change up front.
Yeah.
Always fine with wide receiver at this turn, though, if you just want to double tap and go 3 straight wide.
I'm going to use your Saquon love as a reason to get some exposure to Saquon, because I've never drafted him on my own, or it's a rare thing that I take Saquon there on my own. So when you have love for him, that is when I'm going to take the opportunity to get a share of Saquon. I would imagine I end up with 4% Saquon on the year, so about half of what would be even exposure. But I do agree with you also that I'm not convinced that what happened the past couple of years is what they're going to do this year with no Jason Kelce there. It's just like, we don't know if Jason Kelce was the really big difference maker. Like, we know that, yes, Jalen Hurts, super strong. He might just be the reason that they're great at the tush push, but I'm not 100% convinced that that's the case. And also they have a better running back. Like, I think Saquon better at the goal line than DeAndre Swift. So I'm with you that, like, there is certainly the possibility that they're just going to give it to Saquon at the goal line. All right, let's make Achane comes back to us. No, he does not. He does not.
Oh, he does not come back. So I don't like where we're at the wide receiver position that much. I think it's Kyron's job all the way, and I think he's being underdrafted right now. I almost wonder if we tap running back and then we ditch the position for a long while.
All right, let's do it.
And see if we can just kind of mine wide receiver value out of here. So going back to both of these running back picks, we obviously know we're kind of leaning towards like a adjusted hyper fragile approach here, because we've already spent so much draft capital at the running back position. I think these are just 2 good player, good team arguments. And while the positional value is a little bit off, and probably wide receiver is the best way to go if you're just looking at the charts I literally spent the whole time talking about, we've never seen Saquon Barkley on a team projected for this many points. in a season. Maybe his rookie year is the only time. And we just saw Kyron Williams perform well outside of ADP. The only real concern is this quality rookie coming in behind him. I personally, all I saw on the field was Sean McVay wants to run the wheels off with Kyron Williams
Yeah.
until he can't, when he literally had to sign Darrell Henderson off the street. They do not want to be in that situation as a franchise, knowing that their window is closing with Stafford and Kupp and you know, with a team with Williams and Nakua as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you have any concern? Like, so Blake Corum, you know, everything that I hear about him, and I don't watch college ball, so all of my knowledge of the college players is just things I've heard, some highlights here and there. All I've heard about Blake Corum is that he is a clone of Kyron Williams. Do you have any thoughts on, like, okay, if that is, I mean, I don't know if that's true. That's what I've heard. It sounds like he is, you know, a lot of things they like about Blake Corum are the same things I like about Kyron. So then the question is he just like if Kyron gets hurt, we're going to just use this guy in replace? Or is it like, let's, you know, cut back on the workload for Kyron, try to keep him healthy by giving him, you know, 65-35 split, something like that, cut back his share a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on, like, is that a concern for you at all, that Blake Corum is going to actually cut in? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that the range of outcomes is high here, but I also think that what we saw most recently out of Sean McVay is someone who wanted to trust Kyron Williams, specifically the player Kyron Williams, so long as he could handle the workload, in the way that he wanted to trust Todd Gurley until he couldn't trust Todd Gurley. And so I think that there is an element of, well, if we can't get Kyron, I would love someone that we felt exactly like Kyron Williams about to be ready to go. Does that mean there was one season where Todd Gurley was healthy but winding down, and Malcolm Brown, I believe, was the running back, just had all these touchdowns because they kept subbing him out at the goal line. That's in the range of outcomes here for Blake Corum. I think he's a great fantasy football pick, Blake Corum, because he's cheap. There's a lot of ways that it works, and we don't have a lot of certainty about other handcuffs, but all of this is to say, Kyron Williams, where he's going and where the expected, like, how are we going to project Kyron Williams in week 1? Like, he's going to be projected for 20 opportunities.
I mean, yeah,
and there's just not a lot of third rounders that we get.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on Kyron being a very strong pick. It is rare for me to do 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, and this is something that, so in my experience, the reason I don't end up doing this type of draft a lot, and I'm not saying it's wrong at all, but it gets pretty uncomfortable when you get to, like, you know, round 7, round 8, and you're like, I need wide receivers now, and you got to take Jamison Williams is like the option, or like reaching for like Curtis Samuel, something like that. Whereas like in that range, you can still get really good running backs. So that's why I end up not doing this type of build a ton, even though, like, I agree with you. Like, these are much safer than the running backs you get in that range. All right, we are on the clock here.
Yeah, now we're here. See, I love Amari.
Yeah,
I feel like we got the end of that wide receiver tier, and again, another player who just simply way outperformed this ADP. If the quarterback situation just works itself out, Amari Cooper is almost certainly going to outperform that draft position.
Yep. And just getting back to the, like, so in my experience, it can get pretty uncomfortable, but maybe it is worth it still to take shots on this type of build from time to time and just hope that it does work out. That, like, maybe, you know, it does work out, that people see us taking running backs, they feel the need to start, you know, reaching for a running back ahead of somebody like you know, Deontay Johnson or whatever. Like, we can catch one of those fallers. Maybe it can work out from time to time. It's definitely probably going to be uncomfortable for, I shouldn't say definitely, probably going to be uncomfortable for us in a couple rounds, but I'm looking forward to trying to navigate this with you.
It's going to be fun. And obviously, from a draft capital standpoint, that's a ton invested in running back, to the point where we're really looking for the next Kyron Williams in terms of our next, you know, opportunity to tap the running back position, unless some sort of screaming ADP value comes by.
Yeah. I didn't realize that Lamar went. Where did Lamar go? Oh, okay. I did notice that on the turn previously. Kind of interesting to see. Hang on, let's make our pick. Anybody that you particularly like here? So now
I would have liked to take Keenan Allen. I think that was a strong pick.
Yeah.
I like Anthony Richardson at ADP this year. I will say that. I think the Bills want James Cook to be a number 1. I need to be better about drafting the Packers wide receiver. So I would also say Jaden Reed is fine with this build as well.
All right, I'm going to go Jaden just because
I
we're
like
so far behind at receiver.
Yep, I like it. Yep.
How cognizant are you of bye weeks when drafting? So now we have 2 bye week 10 receivers. So to me, I would be disinclined to take both Jordan Love and Deshaun Watson. Is that something that you're factoring in when you draft, or are you just kind of letting it happen as it happens?
Mostly the latter. In the onesie positions, obviously, I take more care. But the thing is, if Green Bay is already in the top third of the league in projected points, if they're the team you need in Week 17, and I already invested in them, I can't just say I don't think they're going to hit. I literally already said by drafting Jaden Reed, I believe in some way they're going to hit.
Yeah.
At the their ADP or even better. So I don't want to lower my opportunities there that much. Everything in moderation, though.
Everything, yeah. I think that's sharp. You got to pay closer attention to it at the onesie positions for sure. I sometimes find myself so the issue that I run into sometimes as somebody that and I think I tend to overstack more than a lot of people do. So like there are people who are just like, yeah, you just need your quarterback with one pass catcher from the same team. I'm usually targeting 2 or 3. So I actually have run into this exact situation a couple times in the past few days of I start drafting the Packers and it's been in this situation where it's like, okay, targeting these mid-round receivers, and I've taken I think this exact combo: Amari Cooper, Jaden Reed, and then it's like, okay, but I want to take probably Dontavian Wicks later, and then do I want Jerry Jeudy? And then I have like 5 receivers with the Week 10 bye, and then it starts to be a concern even at the wide receiver position. Because then so it's I start thinking about it pretty early. So I am famously an OG bye week bro. I'm like one of the original. Like I really care about this a lot more.
You were caring about bye weeks before we even knew what bye weeks were. I get it, Neil.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody knew what bye
I think I lean mostly into the Week 17 correlations, and if it accidentally creates a bye week problem, then we'll fix it on the way out. Is really kind of how I feel. Okay. Especially because when we get down to this is one of the things that I really wanted to when I came back to drafting this year versus previous years. Like I wanted to take some time and say, like, what are some things that we fundamentally know about football that we just might not be taking into account when we do best ball drafts because of all the other things we're worried about. And one thing that I kept thinking about, I realize we have a pick coming up soon, is that if you've ever done auction drafts or salary cap leagues, that are anywhere close to typical fantasy football leagues, that after the 10th, 11th, maybe 12th round, I know we're picking now, so I'll get back to the point in just a minute.
That was the thing I wanted was Addison for the Reed comeback.
I'm a huge McConkey fan this year.
Oh, hell yeah. All right.
I think that the chart, if you had to ask me what is one team that outperforms their point projection by Vegas, it's the Justin Herbert led Chargers. I know Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, huge losses, still a really good quarterback with a coaching staff who, hey, he's won in the NFL and he's won everywhere he's gone. So there's upside here for sure. And
are you confident? I mean, because we know he's a winner, my assumption would be if they need to pass to win, that is what they're going to do. Like people, like we're making the assumption that they're going to be a run first team, and I'm making that assumption too. Like with the running backs I'm drafting, I'm assuming like the likeliest outcome is they're going to just run a ton. But I also think he'll probably adjust if they need to adjust, if they need to use Justin Herbert to win games. They're going to make that adjustment. Like they're not just going to be stubborn about running the ball. I think.
I totally agree, and I think they just use the team's strength, which is the quarterback's right arm, whereas previous teams led by other quarterbacks, their legs were the difference maker. You're going to have to remind me what we were talking about before this pick because my brain is all over the place. See, here I almost like going with the target upside of Deontay Johnson.
Okay, good. I'm so glad you said that because I really
yeah. Let's just grab someone who can lead the week in targets starting right away.
So I got to say, I feel like we've been kind of bailed out in this draft to some extent that we were able to, like, I think that we have 5 good receivers now, even though we took 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds. I actually feel pretty good about this, as opposed to sometimes you get to this pick and it's like, okay, Jameson, like JSN's off the board too. And like, it's like, oh, I got to take Jameson Williams now. And that's when it really starts hurting. But I feel pretty good about how this team is coming together.
We got a little bit lucky. We we have a lot of options that, if everything breaks right, not only are they number one options, but they're high quality number one options. They're just not valued like that because of the downside. Their downside, in my opinion, is factored in for players like Cooper and Reed and McConkey.
Yeah. Hello to chat, by the way. Lundar says, Neil, I'm going to need to hear you say, according to the tool, just for old time's sake. Who am I calling a tool here, though? I'm not using a tool. You want me to call Matt a tool? What are you asking for here? I don't know. If I find the right situation, I'll say, according to the tool. Good to see you, Thad, GM, Chris. Good to have you in here. Tom, yeah, good evening. It is, 6 hours ahead there. How's it going, Tom? Fucking Alpha wants to know why you're not wearing a white coat.
That's on me. That
is, yeah. Okay, Mr. Povey says, so why not just use ADP as a guide? I suppose I need more info on the... He's talking about your tool. This is a comment from back when we were talking about your tool. Why not just use ADP as a guide as opposed to the outputs from the tool? I'm not sure I totally understand the question.
Yeah, to be clear, ADP is the guiding force behind the simulations. ADP and obviously positional ADP are the primary input when we talk about historical rankings. And there's some other aspects to it, but that's the main thing that is powering this, because that's all we know right now. That's all we have available to us. What we have projections in ADP, but we don't have any other information about how the player actually performs. And not to get into the whole the difficulty of statting out football every year, because we're doing a lot of we're looking at the same player and we're taking evaluations and observations of the same player over time. It just gets into a situation where we should use ADP, like you said, as the main input, but then we need to use history and what that actually has meant. And what I've found is that the variance is way more than we think, especially in these top to mid rounds, where we really just want unique combinations of first 5 round players, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. So one thing, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. One thing that I've been wondering about a lot lately is, okay, hang on, let's make this pick.
Yep. Hold that thought. It's hard to do.
Yeah. We do have
like Burrow here.
Yeah. Okay, good. We are very much on the same page. I love it.
I mean, we got the Chase stack already. We just kind of walked into it. I like getting quarterback at this range again, because this is the ADP where usable value makes sense when we talk about according to the tool, as we say.
According to the tool.
And it's what Vegas already says, that Cincinnati is going to be one of the top teams in points scored. The correlation works. Now we're all in on this Cincinnati thing, and we didn't have to reach for anything.
That worked out really well. I mean, this is I talked to Scott Barrett at Fantasy Points. Joe Burrow is one of his favorite targets in where he's going in best ball drafts. I just think he's going way too low. He actually, this is a free article on Scott's Scott released with Ryan Heath recently. You should go check it out if you haven't already. But very convincing to me that Joe Burrow is just going way too late. And when you think about it, was it last year? Maybe it was 2 years ago. No, I think last year, Joe Burrow was going at like the 4-5 turn. Like that was just like where you would take Burrow, like where you had to go to get Burrow. Then he was hurt for a lot of last year. I think people are underestimating how much that affected his play, his fantasy output last year. So now we're just getting a big discount on a guy who should be healthy this year. All right. Do you want to go here? I'll start by ADP here. Anybody you particularly like here?
I'm a Shaheed truther.
I like Shaheed.
I think that would be my first bet here. I don't hate Raheem Mostert. I think the ADP is being very smart with a player like Mostert. The downside is baked in.
Yep.
Again, but I think it might just be a good player, good team situation. I'm fine with Shaheed there.
All right. I broke the tie as a bye week bro against the week 6 bye for Raheem Mostert. So,
okay, good call.
You also said Shaheed first, and I'm a big Shaheed guy, so I like that call. I guess we could have gone. How do you feel about Josh Palmer? So we talked about the situation there in the Chargers. I know you're a big Ladd guy. Do you think about Josh Palmer like if you miss out on Ladd, or are you just like Ladd is the wide receiver 1? He's the guy I want.
I feel good about Josh Palmer kind of in all drafts this year. I think there's upside from where he is. As we talked about, there's upside with the team overall. There's upside looking at the team point projections versus what we know that this team could do. And so in all builds. And now what's kind of fun is where Herbert's going in drafts. Could we like, I don't know, could we double tap? Probably not, since people will hear our ideas now. But it's one of those things where it's pretty inexpensive to get all of these top options on a team with upside. Then again, Vegas probably knows what they're doing, and they're in the bottom half of the league in terms of projected points. And if they end up being like that, that's probably not the stack you needed in week 17.
Yeah. I would have been happy to do that double stack if it came back to us. Palmer goes at 105. We still could theoretically take Herbert. He's been somebody that, like, you can get him off in the fall to like this pick 141. I don't think that's going to happen in this particular draft, but I've had drafts where I get Herbert to fall all the way there. I was also sort of hoping that we could push Love for whatever reason. I've been noticing this weird trend where Love, actually, somebody pointed this out in one of my drafts, that he has been falling in terms of ADP. But I've had drafts where I've had him come to like pick 120. It's been absolutely nuts seeing the way Jordan Love is falling as his receivers are rising up the board. So that has been pretty shocking. Not in this draft. He does go here though.
I think his ADP is reasonable. I think it's deserved. If you look at the advanced metrics or the efficiency metrics I tend to look at for DFS, when we were breaking down the playoff slates last year, I couldn't believe the type of efficiency he was putting up. I mean, like Mahomes level efficiency. I'm not saying that he's at that level as a player, but even to just pop at that point in the season, late in the season against really good teams, I was impressed. And especially with so much, so we have no idea what's going on with the wide receiver room there. We think all of them can play, essentially, is right. What the problem is. Yep. Just get the quarterback is the safest bet out of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you feel about stacking in general, Matt, while we're talking about, would you consider taking Jordan Love at 120 if all of his top 4 receivers are gone, or is that like not going to take him without the stack?
I think I'm more inclined to lean into stacking with my quarterback pick. However, if he's past ADP and I need a quarterback, I still take him because he's a good player on a good team. Sort of like what we said earlier about our second and third round picks. I usually want my quarterback to have that upside in the same way we usually want to have stacks in our DFS lineups, because those are the ones that typically win. Did quarterback stack lineups always win the Millie Maker every single Sunday? No, they just usually do.
True. Yeah, that's so I'm it would take a little bit of a fall for me. I always end up trying to stack regardless, but that would be a situation where I probably wouldn't take him at 120, but if he fell to like 130, and I need a quarterback, maybe if I didn't have any quarterback at 120, I would. But then I just try to like do some weird stack and then take a Bo Melton or a Tucker Kraft, or there are ways to back stack him.
And that's really what I care most about. Once you get a quarterback, you gotta find a way to just tack somebody on. Okay. Do we have any week 17 correlations that we can put in here?
I don't think so. We don't have any Denver players.
I don't hate Mike Williams then.
Or Dallas Goedert. We don't have a tight end yet.
Oh yeah, we need a tight end. I keep.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's a solid enough, like solid floor, solid upside kind of guy. I don't know. I still treat Dallas Goedert as like elite adjacent. Like he at least has that, like, could be right. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. He also correlates with. Actually, I'll say that he correlates with. I haven't done any kind of research to suggest this, but there's a general. I think the meta in the best ball streets these days is that there is at least some correlation, just betting on the offense. So between Saquon and Dallas Goedert, I don't know. You maybe have done the research. I know you've done a lot of research into like secondary correlations in the past. You were one of the first people I ever heard talking about a potentially positive correlation between rushing quarterbacks and the running backs on the team. And I think that more research has come out supporting what you were saying a few years back. So have you done any research on, do you think there's any positive correlation there between Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley?
I do think there is some in general between running back 1 and tight end 1. Teams that score more points usually they score more touchdowns. Running backs and tight ends need touchdowns to have game-breaking weeks in DFS and best ball.
Are we at the point where we start thinking about running back? I mean, we only have. We could go.
I don't hate Zeke. Dallas is supposed to score a lot of points. They're not all going to be to CeeDee Lamb. Herbert's there. We could be kind of done with quarterback at this point if we want to go there. I like him better than Trevor Lawrence. I know you're kind of a Lawrence truther.
I like Herbert better than Lawrence. It's pretty close for me. We don't have Jacksonville. We end up going Justin Herbert there. I just made the last minute decision.
Okay,
to go
we're
because
okay.
otherwise you were trying to force me to draft Zeke, and I was like, that is just too gross for me. Zeke and Saquon on the same
like
team.
These gross running backs. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I just think that there are. I'm trying to get. Maybe I'm overestimating it, but I'm trying to get in the coach's head. I really think that McCarthy and company think that Zeke and his leadership is like something.
It terrifies me because I think you're probably right.
And now, again, this is what I was talking about. I was talking about auction drafts, and I was talking about where in auction drafts that you typically see everyone start to go for $1, meaning that the variance between them is not even enough to change people from $1 to $2. Yep. 0.5% to 1% of their overall salary cap once you get past the 11th round or so. So we're right at this point in the draft where literally, I'm not saying you should do this. Literally, you could start taking 18th round picks here if you thought the correlations and the bye weeks and everything else that we know from a structural drafting standpoint worked out for you. Because from a usable weeks standpoint, from a spike percentage standpoint, we're all grasping at straws at this point forward. So we think we know a lot of things between this point in the draft and the end. And my argument is we probably know close to nothing.
That seems about right. We're probably not. Do you think I don't think we're at the point yet where it would be $1, or do you think we are? Do you think that like Zeke?
I think we're approaching that point at the 145 pick mark, which is right at the end of 12. I usually expect, every don't get into every league is different when you're talking about these long running salary cap drafts with 100 rules, but I think the point can still transfer over here where we're talking about the variance and the expected value of these players being so little, so minute from the 11th to the 15th to the 18th.
Yeah. Lot of familiar names in chat, people that I want to respond to, but I got to shout out our former coworker and the biggest threat to me being the oldest person to stream all one in my draft, because if he does it, like nobody's ever going to be as old as EMAC. So if he just streams his 150, he's just going to hold that record for the rest of his life, or for the rest of eternity.
EMAC forever. EMAC 2024. EMAC forever.
I have thoughts on this pick, but I want to hear your thoughts as soon as the icon makes his pick, or Theacon, as Scott Barrett calls him.
We're back ready to tap running back.
We do have multiple possible correlations. So I just want to throw these names out there: Quentin Johnson, Jermaine Burton. We could probably wait and take one at the next.
I do like Burton.
I do too.
I am not a QJ truther. But again,
I'm not either.
Because I take McConkey often, I switch it up and take Johnson, even though I don't feel good about it. I hope people understand that.
Should we take Burton here and then a running back at the next, or
we have enough options here?
All right, we're gonna get rid of QJ. I agree. I think this is just a pretty solid running back range. So that was kind of why I thought let's just get Jermaine Burton, because we both just talked about how much we like him. So somebody listening is going to be like, all right, I like Burton too. And I think we might be done at wide receiver now, possibly. We need one more tight end, and then possibly just all running backs from here on out. I'm not sure if that's the case.
I know I'm in the minority here, but I think TJ Hawkinson isn't the worst bet at this point, with a lot of the downside already baked in. I know I'm in a huge minority here. I just think when he's on the field, especially for a young quarterback, we see some boosted targets to the tight end position. We did get the first positive report today that he was jogging on the sidelines. That there's going to be, hopefully, we hope the player gets better. We hope we see those progressions of solid reports, and there's probably going to be changes in ADP. My suspicion is that Hawkinson's ADP isn't done moving.
You think it's going to move up?
It just takes one more set of solid reports, from jogging on the sidelines to might not start season on PUP,
Okay. That is, and it's been all good the past 2 days. We had a Minnesota beat reporter came out and said he wouldn't be shocked if Hawkinson gets 1,000 yards despite missing some time, which
I
is an
saw.
absurd take, but
I
still,
saw.
it's at least
Yeah.
even if that particular person did not do any real math to come to that conclusion, it's at least positive. Like, oh, I think it's going to be good when it returns. Is my takeaway there.
It was a little bit wishful thinking, but I the player was great last year, was just excellent until he went down. And if JJ McCarthy can be anywhere near usable, just like average level, then we probably see solid production from a healthy TJ Hawkinson.
We got some breaking news in chat. Josh Gillum comes in and says JJ Redick, new coach for the Lakers, official. That is a great hire in my opinion. I think JJ Redick is super sharp. I don't know if you're much of a basketball guy, Matt, but seems like a great
gotten
hire.
into it this year, and I think that's going to be a great hire. Does the podcast continue while they're coach and player?
Probably not. That'd be tough.
Probably not.
That's a bummer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because it was really good stuff, and yes, I did spend a bunch of the spring just like digging into the data side of the NBA, and that sport isn't an awesome spot. I know we just finished up the year, but just superstars everywhere, great star power. I'm of the belief that they should actually expand 2 teams, but
to where would you expand to?
Probably Vegas, right? Is probably the first one, and then you got to give Seattle. Is my hunch, but I also would love to see. I think Pittsburgh could get a pro team and really do like have a fan base that really sinks their teeth into it, like that.
Okay.
Knowing what I know about that city, they would embrace an NBA team. I think they're probably second tier though. There's my hot take for the day.
Vegas and Seattle, the top 2, followed by Pittsburgh. That is that's interesting. I think Seattle, like 100% has to be Seattle, even though it didn't work out with the Seahawks. They still have diehard fans from Seattle today, so I think that's a good call. And Vegas, I think those are both well
you
thought
said
out.
Didn't work out with the Seahawks. Was that a Freudian slip?
Did I say
year
that?
And
you're right.
This season and Mike McDonald, but no, we all knew what you meant with the Sonics.
And I don't remember what happened, why the Sonics didn't work out, because it feels like people are still just huge Sonics fans decades later. But for whatever reason, they had to move the team. I'm trying to. We have chat is moving a little bit, and I feel like I missed several things that I wanted to respond to. I guess
let's say hi.
I feel like that's something I probably just need to get used to, that I can't respond to everything that I want to, because I always want to like engage in conversations with chat, but then it's like, but I want to talk to Matt. We haven't talked in a long time, so I'm like, I just want to have the conversation with Matt, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that chat from half an hour ago like was relevant to what we were talking about back then, and I struggle with that dynamic a little bit. We are on the clock. Damn. I do think we need to be slamming running backs now. Do you have anybody?
It's time to go back. Vidal is, I think, too far into the trenches with the Chargers. So okay. I think I like Chuba. We're looking at 2 usable weeks here. Elijah Mitchell is not my least favorite pick either. If we're tapping running back,
let me give you one more. So my favorite player, my highest exposed player currently, it was on the board there, and we went away from. Khalil Herbert is a guy that I'm super into late in drafts. It's just a bet for me on talent mostly. Just like I think he's actually good. His efficiency numbers have been really solid at the NFL level already, and I think that he goes late because they have 3 running backs there with Roschon, like 3 draftable running backs everybody likes. But I just think Khalil Herbert is more talented. I could be totally wrong. Like I think was talking about with on the fantasy point stream that there is potential that like Roschon is a better fit with DeAndre Swift. So like Khalil Herbert might just be a 0 if everything stays as is. To me, there's just like there are multiple outs to Khalil Herbert just being like an absolute smash, and that is what I'm betting on at this point in the draft. But Eli Mitchell,
I hear you. Let's make this pick here.
I'm good with Eli Mitchell if he's your favorite pick here.
And that's sort of like we can make the argument here for Eli Mitchell. If we're already saying there's a lot of zeros in this player's range of outcomes, I want the upside to be the highest possible upside it can be. Someone like if CMC goes down. Now we know that Eli Mitchell's not going to get 100%,
Right.
But we're still going to see San Francisco probably in the upper half of point projections, and we're probably going to see him in the upper half of running back opportunity projections if things break right. That's the kind of upside we need, and especially during best ball drafts where we're now just thinking more about our running back in terms of structural drafting. We don't really need floor at all. We just don't.
Right.
We've already baked in the floor and the ceiling, like legendary upside, if you will, for those two top running backs. The rest is just gravy.
Yeah, absolutely. I like just making those upside bets when you get to this late in the draft. So I think my thinking with Khalil Herbert is similar to your thinking on Elijah Mitchell, where it's like probably zero. Like we're not, these guys don't have much standalone value at all. It's just a like there are clear paths to absolutely being a home run pick. With Elijah Mitchell, it's just straight up. It's just a CMC injury is all it would take, and CMC has been pretty healthy the past couple of years. A lot of wear and tear on that body as a result. So wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world if Elijah Mitchell benefits from an injury. And then Khalil Herbert, just similar thing where it's like DeAndre Swift has not been the healthiest player on the planet. Maybe he's just not made for 17 games a year. So maybe there's that out, and then there's also the trade rumors, which is maybe wish casting a little bit on my part. The little bit of rumors surrounding Khalil. Everybody I talked to was like, it would make no sense for the Bears to trade him. Everybody seems to downplay it, but I'm like, the rumors continue to happen. So
yeah, it's
chance,
true.
Right?
There have been. I think it's just one of those things where the upside is real in Chicago, but we still need a lot to go right. Caleb Williams has to be good. The offense has to be good. The running back room has to sort itself out in a way that goes for Khalil Herbert, where it feels like I want the fewest amount of things to have to break.
Yep.
And that's really the exercise we're doing here, because I'm looking at the EV charts, and the 50th percentile fantasy points for a 15th round running back or a 14th round running back is 2.5 points per game, 2.2 points per game. We're talking about probably something that doesn't matter at all. I do think tight end is somewhere where we're a little weak. Man, Jonnu on Miami is someone I've started to take at the end of drafts here.
Yeah.
I don't know about Conklin.
Oh, are we on the board? We are on the board. I like Jonnu. Yeah, I thought.
Okay, you feel good about that? I
like Jonnu quite a bit. Yeah. I did this yesterday where I said, oh no, he has the same bye week as TJ Hawkinson, and Tyler, who I was streaming with, pointed out doesn't matter because TJ Hawkinson is not going to be back by then anyway, most likely. So, which was a strong point. So we at least have in those bye weeks we have Jonnu covering Goddard covering Jonnu, TJ.
I've been experimenting with four tight ends here because we know we need to hit on the next Trey McBride or something like that to really get the type of tight end season that would differentiate us from the crowd. And so, again, there's nothing structurally incorrect about drafting 4 tight ends. The expected value is essentially 0 for all of these players at this point. So I've tried to be more open to quarterback and tight end just all the way through at this point, even though it feels like I'm leaving wide receiver upside on the table if I do that.
Yep. All right, so we're at 2-4-7-3. So you don't think this is strong? I mean, we spent a little bit on Goddard. I think I'd be fine.
Okay. All right. If you are, then I am.
I don't think I don't think we need to force it, but we can. I think we need at least one more running back clearly. We are on the clock. So let's take a look at those two positions. If there is a tight end that you really like here, I'd be fine taking him. Otherwise, I say we push it and make a running back decision first.
How are you feeling about Estime? I feel like
I like just taking
Estime.
Yeah. I like making that bet. Just I like making the bet of taking one Broncos running back in like most drafts that I do. So it's like I'm back in on Javonte. I was not in on Javonte for a while, but I think more and more the like rumblings kind of suggest to me that he probably is still going to be the running back one for the Broncos. Peyton does seem to like him better than I thought Peyton liked him. So I'm back in on Javonte in some drafts. I like making the bet on Jaleel McLaughlin quite a bit, just as he's probably never going to be a bell cow. He's probably not going to get 20 touches a game, but like he's been good. He was very good last year in his limited opportunities. They talk about how hard of a worker he is. Kind of sounds like a Peyton guy, even though he lost playing time throughout the year. I think he's going to win back some playing time this year, and he's efficient when he gets it. So I don't think you need the bell cow role for Jaleel McLaughlin.
And what if Sean Payton figures it out with running backs again. Because there was a
Right.
time, Neil, there was a time, you know this because of your age, that
Exactly.
the Saints running backs, the Sean Payton running backs were, the belle of the ball. You could, there was, well, I think it was the 2017 season where you could have started two of them in Ingram and Kamara and just been wrecking leagues.
Right. Yeah, it definitely could happen. And we also have a number of running backs throughout the years that have worked in the same way that we're kind of expecting Jaleel McLaughlin to, where he's not a full-time bell cow back. He's just like the speedster third down back who still is really valuable, have had value in fantasy. So I just like to bet where he's going in drafts. And then if you strike out on both of those two, I think Estimate is a perfectly good late round flyer, likely zero, who has league winning upside.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I'm sorry, I do not have my playoff schedule memorized. Who do we have playing the Bengals in Week 17?
Denver. So that's another bonus for
fantastic. We're actually geniuses. I don't know if you've heard that before. We did that on purpose.
I have.
I've didn't mention it until this point.
Yeah.
Great. So we're already kind of leaning into that stack, and now somebody like Yoshibas, we think pure DFS or didn't they grab a tight end in the draft? I'm
Eric
sorry.
Ball.
Yeah.
They might have grabbed two. Here, let me look. I feel like they might have two rookie.
Eric Ball. Yeah, they did. And that's what I'm talking about. Now we're just thinking from a pure DFS perspective. We know the expected value is zero, but just any tight end from that game that has upside that could be possibly like the next Trey McBride is a fine pick at the end of the draft. So there he is in the middle.
Yeah, Smith or Eric All. I'll throw them both.
Either one feels like the right kind of correlation play, at least the way I kind of think about the last round.
Yeah, no, I think that is very sharp. Let's think about who would be a better fit on this team. Let's see how far. Okay, we got a couple picks. So we're at 2-5-7-3. Let me read off the team. At quarterback, we have Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Running back, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, Chuba Hubbard, Eli Mitchell, Audric Estime. We are on the clock now.
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver, Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, Jaden Reed, Ladd McConkey, Deontay Johnson, Rashid Shaheed, Jermaine Burton, and a tight end we have Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson, Jonnu Smith. Who do you think is a better fit on this particular team? What do you think we need more?
I think we should go with Yoshibas. I think that there is still uncertainty with that wide receiver 2 position, or really wide receiver 3, excuse me, in Cincinnati. And we know the variance from a game-to-game basis. We know that Higgins and Jamar Chase and the running backs won't take it all. Let's see if that works. Also, rookie tight ends, that's a tough bet. We know it works out every once in a while, but usually it takes 4 years or so to really get going.
And I think he's recovering from an ACL also. So there's just added, already
really
probably
one of those at the position.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I like, so Yoshibas is one of my highest exposed player in pre-draft stuff. And Burton is one of my highest exposed player in post-draft stuff. But part of me is like, maybe I need to be going back to Yoshibas a little bit more frequently than I do, because he was also more popular in the drafts where I was taking him. And it wouldn't be that shocking to see him take that wide receiver 3 role instead of Jermaine Burton. It's not what I expect to happen, but there's certainly a 35-40% chance that it happens.
Right. And now the answer, probably as you continue to draft throughout the summer, because of what you've already done, and this is what's cool about becoming a volume drafter, becoming a best ball bro, right?
Yep.
Is the answer is now both.
Right.
The answer is now you diversify with both based on where you got them, making sure that you keep ADP value. Let's take a look at this thing closes out. So we got a ton of talent at the top, and I know that the structure is the only thing that makes people uneasy.
Yeah. And I'll say this now. I've been doing. I'll read off your team if you want me to. So just say it in chat if you want us to go over your team. Also, otherwise we won't do it if you don't say anything. All right. At quarterback, we have Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Very good quarterback room, in my opinion. At running back, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, Chuba Hubbard, Eli Mitchell, Audric Estime. At wide receiver, Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, Jaden Reed, Ladd McConkey, Deontay Johnson, Rashid Shaheed, Jermaine Burton, and Andre Yoshivas. At tight end, Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson, Jonnu Smith. So as far as correlations, we have Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase, Jermaine Burton, and Andre Yoshivas. We have the bring back of Audric Estime, and then we have Justin Herbert with just Ladd McConkey. And who are they playing? the Saints. I forget who the Chargers are playing
We
in
have
week.
Shaheed then.
If it is the Saints, I think it might be the Saints, and we have Shaheed as the bringback. That would be a nice little bonus that we did accidentally also. But overall, I think so. Quarterback, I think perfectly strong team. Running back, I'm glad we took those two early because we end up going pretty late for
Yeah,
our latter three running backs. But I think this could play. What do you think, Matt? Is this a good enough running back room?
I think uh, it needs two players to do all the heavy lifting, right? And of course, we draft like it's going to be Saquon and Kyron, but we hope that out of that small bunch, two of them are basically the ones that you need in your lineup every single time, and and from there, we're kind of expecting mostly unusable players.
Yeah,
And it goes down. I think Pete Overs has said this before. All you need is quantity or quality. You
right.
don't need both. And
Yep.
so we took our shots at quality, and then we avoided it almost too much to the point where we felt uncomfortable. I actually think that's probably what helped us out in this draft because we end up with what I think is a fine wide receiver room.
Yeah, I think our wide receiver room actually ends up looking really good with Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, Jaden Reed, Lad McConkey, Deontay Johnson, Rashid Shaheed, Jermaine Burton, and Andre Yoshevich. Like I think the floor is pretty high and the ceiling is very high for this team. So even though we took two running backs in the first round, I actually feel really good about this wide receiver room.
Hey, this is all we can do. That's really how I feel. Back to my my fantasy football nihilism. We got good players, we got good teams, we
Yeah,
got correlation, we got upside. Now we roll the dice. Now we just see how it goes, and we do this 150 more times, and we walk. What is it? And then profit. That's it.
yeah, exactly. Question mark, question mark, question mark, profit.
Profit.
Played it exactly right. Who Hames said that we could take a look at his team. And Who Hames, yes, I did notice that you were in my Dalmatian draft earlier. Unfortunately, Matt, I did all three of mine. It's a three max contest. Did all three of mine and didn't feel good about any of my Dalmatians, but super fun contest. Who Hames, all right, your team. Who Hames has Anthony Richardson, Matthew Stafford at quarterback, at running back, James Cook,
Yes,
Ramondre Stevenson, Raheem Mostert. Oh, it gets Ramondre Stevenson after ADP, even after the news. Raheem Mostert, Blake Corum, Kendra Miller, Tyrone Tracy. At wide receiver, Puka Nakua, Drake London, Michael Pittman, Jamison Williams, A.D. Mitchell, Wandell Robinson, Demarcus Robinson, Greg Dortch. And at tight end, Trey McBride and Tyler Conklin. So as far as correlations, has Anthony Richardson with Michael Pittman
right? Yeah.
and A.D. Mitchell. And then he has, I believe it's the Giants, he has Wandell Robinson coming back. So nice correlation there. And Tyrone Tracy, running back, bring back as well. Has Matthew Stafford with Puka Nakua and Demarcus Robinson, and then has Greg Dortch and Trey McBride as bring back. So really well correlated team. Tight end looks.
One comment I will make here. Obviously,
Yeah.
great job with the correlations, and just like if you think about it from a DFS perspective, this team already makes logical sense. So great job here. Not trying to say anything other than I get worried that when you pick a player like Anthony Richardson, whose true upside, his true ceiling comes from an extraordinary amount of rushing touchdowns,
Sure.
that also tends to take away from the extraordinary upside of the wide receiver room. I'm not saying it's impossible. We've seen teams do it all in terms
Yep.
of their offensive prowess. But in my opinion, when you double stack a rushing quarterback, you're kind of asking for two things to go right simultaneously, where it's hard for both of those things to happen. Not saying it's impossible, especially if Indianapolis ends up being one of the teams that just scores way more points than Vegas says they will, which means that Anthony Richardson had a great season. It's just not the first way I think of Anthony Richardson getting to that kind of legendary season.
So would you would prefer Anthony Richardson single stacked as opposed to double stacked?
Yeah, or I would just say that I devalue the need for stacking quarterbacks. Okay. Going back to our conversation about Jordan Love earlier in this draft, where we much prefer him in a situation where we can stack him. Anthony Richardson and rushing quarterbacks in general, like a Daniel Jones, even later in drafts, something like that.
Yep.
The stacking is just less important, especially because of what you said. We can always grab that 18th or 17th round player that creates, that DFS little pool of players that is correlated. We can always get that at the end.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you give a smaller positive boost to the wide receivers with a rushing quarterback. Not that you would be totally opposed to double stacking. It's just you don't force as much. So maybe here, like where he takes AD Mitchell ahead of ADP, maybe you don't reach ahead of ADP for AD Mitchell because you already have Pittman, but you're not totally opposed to the idea of double stacking your rushing quarterback.
100%.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, Ad Mitchell may end up being the rookie of the year. You know,
Right.
he's got the draft capital where like he could be a game-changing player, even with Pittman being a decent player himself still. That's
Yeah.
not the most likely thing. We can only play the expected game, but that's just where I kind of stand on things.
Okay. Yeah, no, that is good. I struggle with that because I'm like, as I said, I overstack in general, and part of it is just like you don't need all of your players to like be big hits necessarily. So it's like, well, I'll just throw the everything the kitchen sink, everything with the kitchen sink, and hope one of them works out. But when there is enough draft capital, then it gets a little bit tougher. We had somebody in one of these drafts actually yesterday that took all three of those Colts receivers, and I was like, even for me, I was like, that feels a little bit too much to take all three of those Colts receivers in your Anthony Richardson stack. And I think you just laid out the reasoning pretty
Take Joe
well.
Flacco at the end of your draft if you do that.
Right. Yeah.
Take
Yeah,
Flacco
exactly.
and just be like, sorry, Richardson, like it didn't work out for you in this version of my best ball mania drafts. But I
Yep.
mean, the way Flacco threw his arm off in Cleveland, if that
Right. If
if
that
that
happens, oh man,
happens,
wheels up.
yeah.
All right. Absolute Sauce says Pete my squad in the 2-hole. All right, let's take a look. Gets the 2-hole, goes Dak Prescott and Baker Mayfield at quarterback. At running back, Travis Etienne, Devin Singletary, Zach Charbonnet, Marshawn Lloyd, Kimani Vidal. Wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, Rashi Rice, Rome Odunze, Brandon Cooks, Javon Baker, Jalen Tolbert, Trey Palmer, and at tight end, Mark Andrews and Brock Bowers. So correlations, he has Dak Prescott with CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert with the bring back of Devonta Smith. And then he has Baker Mayfield with Mike Evans and Trey Palmer. Any bringbacks here? No bringbacks from Carolina.
Still really solid in terms of the correlation game. Dak Prescott at ADP, one of my favorite picks at any position.
Me too.
I think you know that the running back room needs one of those players to step up in a way that their ADP doesn't say that they will.
Yep.
I like all these players though. I like all the situations where like
someone
could emerge. Devin Singletary was a player that earlier in his career I really liked the efficiency. I think that offense in New York might be an offense where like good players go to wither, but that's only my opinion. And kind of with Zach Charbonnet, I think we're going to get a very different offensive approach with just an approach to running back usage with a new coaching staff compared to Pete Carroll's, frankly, old school approach to the running back position, to the point where I love taking these talented second round backs that are on the team, because who knows what the pie chart looks like in terms of opportunity in that backfield. Lloyd and Vidal, they're kind of the two of the hot names if you're plugged in this time of year. We got to remember that these could be zeros. These could be literally healthy scratches by the time we get to September. At the same time, I like them both.
I don't know, Savoca, if you saw the Twitter exchange. Davis Maddock posted about the potential for Kimani Vidal to be a zero this year, and Kimani Vidal's agent responded and said that there's a less than 1% chance that he is a zero this year. So if that gives you any kind of encouragement,
just amazing.
Really funny, right?
Yeah, because I've tweeted earlier that that is what has replaced best shape of his life season. It's now because of the best ball bros, us included here.
Yeah,
it's just like a whole week of no. This 6th round running back from Troy is the guy you need. I don't know what else to say. That's how confident we are in June.
Yeah. I would be surprised if Lloyd is a zero.
I like the player.
Yeah. But you're right. Yeah, maybe I'm underestimating the potential. Like in my mind, it's already like Marshawn Lloyd. He's going to get 35% of that backfield with upside for more. But it's like you're right. We are in June. I'm like way over projecting. Trying to overconfident in my projections. You are probably right that there is at least some chance for a zero there. Wide receivers look good to me. Yeah, I think this is a solid team.
And I love Mark Andrews too,
Yeah.
especially. I know there's been the elite tight end dialogue, and I think someone already said this. It's where you feel comfortable only drafting two, and for me, uh, it's only Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce.
Roscoe says, when you talk about Adonai, you can't call him AD. His mama don't like it. You got to say the full name. I haven't heard that. That's interesting. I've always heard everybody call him AD Mitchell. I didn't know that that was a that his mama didn't
Hey,
like
he's
it.
got a preference. I'm happy to call him
I'll call him
Adonai.
whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Um, and then I thought we had one more. So let me just check real quick, and then we'll jump into another draft. Oh yeah, we did Absolute Sauce and Who already. C40 wanted to know what his team would have looked like with Estime. So we stole Estime from Snatch Catchers. I don't think there's anybody
That's
else.
the only thing we were thinking of. We weren't thinking of our own team.
Yeah.
We were in it to steal it.
Yeah, we got your guy. Eat it, Chris. All right. CJ Stroud and Jordan Love, the strong quarterbacks, obviously. Joe Mixon, Zach Moss, Antonio Gibson, Khalil Herbert, CEH Keaton Mitchell at running back. At wide receiver, he has Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Zay Flowers, Christian Kirk, Dontavian Wicks, Jalen Polk, Tez Walker, and at tight end, Evan Ingram, Dalton Schultz, and Luke Musgrave. So he has CJ Stroud with Joe Mixon and Nico Collins.
I really like this team.
Dalton Schultz.
I think you've done a really good job in the correlation game. Again, good players, good teams, which is still the thing I'm trying to not get too stuck in the weeds. I think a lot of these players are considered not just target hogs, opportunity hogs, but also extremely talented once they get the ball. Great combination, hard to do in drafts.
And he's way correlating the team too. So he's got all those triple stack with the quarterback, and then he also has Tez Walker and Zay Flowers and Keaton Mitchell as bringback. So really correlating that game in week 17. And then he has Jordan Love with Dontavian Wicks, love that, and Luke Musgrave. And then does he have anybody from Minnesota? He has Justin Jefferson. So just like really correlated. Yeah, this is a really strong team. And how would it have looked with Estime instead of Mitchell? One less correlation. So there's that, I guess.
I think that's hey, I think it's just as well as you can do it, man.
Yeah.
I got no notes. Great job.
No notes. All right. We are, I didn't see anybody else looking for, we just did C40. All right. Let's jump into another one. Let's do another draft here while we've got Matt. So if you want to jump in right now, because I'm about to. And we got a few spots left, so people can draft with us if they want to. I saw Born Loser was in the chat, but his screen name is DAZ or DAZ or something like that. So it did not answer my question whether it is David or Daniel Zach.
So we have no idea.
So we still have no idea. I think it's the fantasy football analyst, not the poker player, I believe, is Born Loser, but I'm not 100% positive. All right, we are full. And we got the icon in here again. King of Queen City makes into this one. Who back for this one. Some names that I've seen in drafts, but I don't know if they actually come in the stream. And then we get the 12 hole for this one. So this will be an interesting one.
Yep. All right.
Do you have a favorite position to draft from?
I hate that the numbers say draft earlier. Like, it still says the first pick is still better. So I'd rather draft first than last. I know functionally that I can overcome it, but are you asking me which one first every time?
Spurious News says, since we have Matt here, can he answer if data science is really a thing or just a term smart people use to convince dumb people to give them a job?
It's really a thing. I just think that a lot of places aren't ready for data science.
Yeah.
The data has to be ready, and that involves engineering, software engineering, data engineering, getting the infrastructure of data into a place where machine learning and rigorous statistical analysis can make a huge business difference. It's hard work when the typical approach is we've got a data scientist, throw the spreadsheets at him. But it's not impossible, and I will also say that data science is not AI; they're not the same thing, and just a lot of things can be solved with just a few metrics and statistical models and statistical rigor that we've known about for decades, and that's enough. So I would say no, but I'm also, biased because the
Yeah.
title. So
Yep.
there you go. You shouldn't
No,
trust me.
I like that comment also. Mike Bolduc in the chat, good to see you here. Why didn't you come in here to draft with us with one of your weird? He likes to draft, different teams than the rest of us, which I don't know if that would be good or bad to have in the
down
draft
life.
with us.
That's right. I like to hear that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
All right. So by ADP now, it would be Jahmyr Gibbs, Marvin Harrison, Drake London. Anybody you particularly like here?
I want to throw up. I mean, I like going wide receiver when I have no idea here. I like Drake London this year. The others, I would actually go London or Olave.
London and Olave.
Oh, right, we have the double tap.
Yeah,
I actually like it. Yeah, London and Olave.
London Olave. It's a little bit different. They do have the same bye week. We're not worried about that.
I'm just not a huge Marvin Harrison fan at ADP.
Okay, fair enough. We can diversify our bye weeks later on. Not a huge issue there. And that'll be a little bit of a unique start, London and Olave, because neither one of them is usually goes ahead of pick 12. So it's normally London will go at the turn here, and then Olave goes a little bit later. So I think that's probably going to be a kind of a unique pairing there, which I like.
And that's my MO, as we were kind of talking about, right? We know there's no functional difference between the mid second round pick and the early second round pick. It's okay to shake it up. It just feels uncomfortable.
Yeah. To tell you how chalky Olave Adams is going to be, even though neither of them, it's a similar thing where neither of them regularly goes to the turn. So I think it would be a unique combo, except for we had back-to-back comments about Olave and Adams for the week 17. And I've seen it several times. So I agree with you. That's another good combo that probably not going to be that chalky, but I have seen it enough times. I'm it's not going to be a rare combo. I think.
And also, chalk is totally different in best ball than something like DFS. By chalk, we mean what? 7% of lineups in the finals are going to have it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very different thing.
10%.
Yep. Dean says Harrison has a great late season schedule. I am somewhat in on Harrison this year. Part of it though is I think that it's partially because it's so fun just taking Kyler, doing the Harrison and taking Kyler a little bit later. I just man, this team, it just seems like such a fun team right now. And we could get to week 3 and I'll be like, this is so not fun. Why did I do this so much? But I do take a good amount of Harrison. Is it just that he's a rookie? You just don't want to be betting on a rookie that early?
I want a little bit more floor and certainty
in a first round pick.
And I'm fine with betting on the ceiling. We're going for $1.5 million. But the truth is we can lose our draft in the first round.
True.
And so the downside is real. It was almost comical how they tried to use the fact that he didn't do anything at the combine or leading up to the draft to as evidence against him. And I was like, this dude does not need to do a thing but walk on the field in September. And so in that regard, go ahead and take him, be in on him. I just am a little bit below ADP.
So if you, and I guess you'll use your tool. So I was going to ask you, if you do 150 drafts, would you have 0 Harrison? But I guess if you use your tool, it'll lead you to some Harrison. But you imagine you'll be underweight to the 8 1/3% or whatever.
Yeah, I actually just ran it as I was downgrading Harrison, and it put a 9th overall in the sim that I ran.
Okay,
so there you go.
Yeah, so there are sims where he comes out looking really good, smelling like roses.
And part of that, or I should say, a major part of that, the main part of that, is because of other people drafting him there, and that should make obvious sense.
Yep.
But there is so much upside there that he's already going at the end of drafts. We've waxed poetic enough just to say, just because I have a take, the ADP actually does override it and overweight it to the point where I'll just be slightly underweight and not avoid altogether.
Yep. Who are comps for Harrison Jr. that scare you off him as a first round pick? He seems more like the Chase prospect than Alshon Jeffrey to me. I don't know.
Corey Davis is the best example. Black box prospect who had a minor injury coming into the draft season. Chose not to do anything at the combine. Still drafted 5th overall. Fooled me. I think he had 10 or 11 targets the first game he ever played, and I was like, "Oh,
Did he
we're
really?
all in." I'm trading for him in dynasty leagues.
Brutal.
And yeah, it happens, guys. And I don't think he was a bad player. He just never kind of lived up to that draft type, and he certainly isn't one who would, based on what we know, he would want to spend first-round draft capital on.
Was Corey Davis similar prospect as Marvin Harrison? Like, did he have the same kind of hype coming out?
If I remember correctly, with Corey Davis, he's from a smaller school, and so it was a little bit less certain about where he was going to go in the draft, and so teams were being very cagey about. Yeah, he's from Western Michigan. That's right. Very cagey about what they felt about him, and what ended up happening is the Titans felt really strongly. I like Laporta a lot this season.
Okay.
I do have Kelsey ahead of him. Is my only thing, but that is my personal rankings.
Okay.
The wide receiver position I feel is weak at this moment. How do you feel about the quarterbacks at the top
I'd be fine with
of the board?
with Allen or Lamar.
I love Josh Allen and Lamar. Lamar's actually ahead of Hurts for me, so let's do Allen. Let's do it.
Okay, Allen Laporta. Do you want to do Allen Laporta and then figure out who we pair with Allen later? Or do you want to leave off Laporta?
Let's try. When I go early quarterback, I don't usually like to tap the onesie positions both at the same time because I feel like I'm going to get behind at wide receiver.
Do you want to go Zay Flowers, Amari Cooper? One of those?
Amari is my bet here, big time.
All right,
but
let's do it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go another week 12 bye because we are so now I'm just thinking, since we have Josh Allen, probably not going Cousins or Carr in a 2 quarterback build. It would have to be a 3 quarterback build. So I was like, okay, I don't want to take another week 12 bye. I also like the idea of pushing Laporta here because I think it makes it slightly more likely that we get Kincaid to come back to us. What is Kincaid? His ADP is 52. Just like if we take Laporta, that's one of the elite tight ends off the board, and it just pushes all of them. Like if there are people in our draft who want elite tight ends, that gives them one fewer option and makes it, I think, a little bit more likely that Dalton Kincaid goes before it gets back to our pick. Now I don't know how likely it is that he would come back to us anyway, but that is kind of, I think about that a little bit as just like a, okay, maybe we want Laporta, but maybe if we don't take Laporta, it makes it slightly likelier that Kincaid makes it back to us.
Right. I still only, especially like when we're talking about the Sims tool that I made, the only position I kind of see as having its own market in drafts is quarterback for obvious reasons. We all know that quarterback run that we tend to see right as the double-digit rounds start to hit, but we can see variance from draft to draft there. I personally think that there's been a dose of rationality when it comes to the tight end position because there's uncertainty about who is at the top. We're seeing the entire mid-tier get pushed up, and I actually think that is a rational response. But it also means that for the first time, we might be able to nab the tight end 1 overall in the 5th round with reasonable expectation based on positional ADP.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic that it is like you said, like we don't have a clear tight end 1. I also do you think we're going to have a better tight end 6 than we've had like in the past decade?
I actually don't think we're going to see
a
drastic change in scoring. I just think what everyone is doing is shooting for the moon. They think their dude is going to be tight end 1.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't think they're bad bets, right? Like this could be the year that Travis Kelce falls off. I think, we got Detroit sitting. I keep forgetting that Detroit is literally the 2nd highest projected team in terms of points this year.
Are they?
And the only other, target hog on the team is Amon-Ra. I personally, as I said earlier, I really think the elite tight end conversation is, are you the best receiving option for your team? And I think you can only make arguments on 2 teams and 3 if you include the Cardinals. It's Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. After that, I think Drake London's better than Kyle Pitts. I think the Ayuk Samuel CMC combo, as amazing as Kittle is, like from a fantasy football standpoint, is better than Kittle. Certainly the Philly receivers outdo Dallas Goedert most of the time. And so I can't count those in that elite category if they're not even the top receiving option when I'm projecting them week to week.
Sure. Could he make a case for Evan Ingram if that's your metric? Like, is there a world in which Evan Ingram is the leading receiver for the Jaguars?
I was working with the 4-for-4 receiver buy low model, and
Okay.
it was just screaming about the discrepancy of Evan Ingram and the rest of the Jaguars receivers. I guess you can. I personally think that Christian Kirk is way ahead in terms of the way that they scheme games. Now, I don't want to go full on real football conversation, but I do think the goal every week is to have Travis Etienne and Christian Kirk get theirs. Obviously, you've got plenty of plays schemed up for Ingram, but he's still a second look to me, a second tier on that offense.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of like any other tight end that like could be in the conversation to like get the most targets at the very least for the team. I draft a ton of Christian Kirk, so glad to hear you say that. Just thinking like there's no like clear. It wouldn't be that shocking if he ends up with the most targets on the team at the very least.
And you know this from years of DFS. We can say that this is the way it's going to shake down over the course of the season, but then the game-to-game variance is actually hilarious, right? When the wide receiver 4 is the one that ends up with 9 targets, when the wide receiver 1 had 6 targets, but one of them was an 80-yard touchdown, and the tight end 2 had, you know how it goes. So like, that's it. All comes down to the variance of football, honestly.
We did not get any fallers to come with Josh Allen here. I'm not inclined to reach for any Buffalo options right now. Sort by ADP here, it would be Josh Jacobs. Actually, a bit of a fall. Man, Josh Jacobs, his ADP has fallen. At one point, he was up to like ADP of like 35. So he has fallen quite a bit. We could go Pitts and add him on to our London. Again, they do have the week 12 bye, so that's not ideal.
I don't love. Yeah, I'm okay with the Pitts pick. I actually think Josh Jacobs is a great pick when you have no running backs at this point in the draft.
Yeah, I think he makes sense.
Because think about the week 1 projection for Jacobs. He's going to be projected among the highest touches in the league week 1, assuming health. And that's really what we want from that first running back.
So there's one pick. Now we have a second pick here. Do we want to go Pitts? We could go Chris Godwin, tap another running back. I'm open.
I actually like D-Hop. I still think he's got one more in him. I absolutely am fine with Chris Godwin as well. I think after that, I see a tier break.
Would you want to go
as well?
Yeah, I'd be fine with either of these. We didn't get Kincaid, so we're not gonna. Let's go Pitts.
Let's do it. Let's have some fun.
Build in that kind of secondary correlation with London and Pitts. Just make a bet on that offense without the quarterback. I think that makes some sense for us. I think it's a pretty nice start. We're gonna have to sort out the Josh Allen pairings later, or pairing. Maybe we just do one, but we get Josh Allen at quarterback, Josh Jacobs at running back, at wide receiver. We have Drake London, Chris Olave, Amari Cooper, Kyle Pitts. Since we took Josh Allen, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the Bills, which I really struggle with what to do with the Bills, because the way I see it, we're going to have probably at least one hit from all of the Bills pass catchers. And I don't love taking any of them where they're going in drafts right now. I don't love taking Kincaid where he goes. I don't love taking Coleman where he goes. I don't love taking Curtis Samuel. I don't love taking Khalil Shakir. So I really struggle with the Bills, because I'm like, probably one of these guys is going to be a hit in at least a decent sized hit. But I struggle to take any of them because I have no idea which one it's going to be. Can you help me out there at all? Do you have any strong opinions on the Bills pass catchers?
Well, I will say this. I love them all at ADP.
Oh, you love them all at 80. Okay,
we love them all at ADP because I think we're a little bit ahead of our skis with Keon Coleman. I mean, talk about a guy I hope is good. I hope this guy's in the league for 15 years, the way that he does the media tours. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And he's a second round pick. He's got good draft capital, but we've seen it not work out or take time for many second round picks. I love the fact that this team is not only top 5 in projected team points, but there's so much uncertainty about the wide receiver position that it's pushed them all down into a range where they're incredibly inexpensive in terms of draft capital you need to invest in them. So my answer is really all of them. I think Khalil Shakir is a really interesting pick despite not getting consistent volume. He's been a highly efficient on said volume for most of his career. Curtis Samuel is always a player who I think gets undervalued in fantasy football, but coaches seem to always talk him up and find ways to use him very specifically. And I believe he's with the coordinator that used him best in Carolina, reunited this year. So both of those picks at ADP, absolutely love. Not to mention the fact that Josh Allen falls into that rushing quarterback category where I don't have to correlate up top in the same way I feel strongly with that Chase and Burrow combination that we had in our last draft, where we know where the way that Burrow and Chase become the players you needed to win the whole thing is they did it together. Whereas Josh Allen could do it with no one. We're not going to take that bet. We're probably not going to do no one, but we know he can get there and get the Bills to that top 5 scoring plateau or to that level without anybody else really coming through in a big way.
Okay. All right. So we're taking sort of the opposite, not the opposite, but like I'm largely out on these Bills guys unless I have Josh Allen, and then I have obviously I'm always stacking. So then I often am forced to reach for one of them. That is good to hear that you are in on the Bills. I know Scott Barrett put out a tweet a week or two ago that was kind of along your lines, where it was like, you look at how the Bills receivers have done over recent weeks, recent seasons, and it's like, look at the ADPs. This doesn't line up. They should be higher in terms of ADP. I just like
someone's going to be a value.
As somebody who usually embraces uncertainty in these games, for whatever reason, I struggle with the Bills. I'm just like, I can't, I don't know what to do here. It's been a struggle for me. So we'll
especially
take one of them.
Because you're often in a zone with these that tier of wide receiver in ADP where everyone else feels like they're kind of done at the position. So I kind of like also having, some bullets to fire in this tier with Josh Palmer as well.
Yeah. So we could go Samuel here. So we're at pick 84. So it'd be a little bit of a reach for Palmer, but not a huge
I don't
reach.
like the running backs here that much. So I would be fine with just going wide receiver.
Do you want Curtis Samuel? All right, we got Curtis
I probably
Samuel.
would have gone just straight ADP if we're deviating this far. But
I think he actually might have been 80. He was one pick behind Cortland Sutton there, so he was second next. You don't like this, so this is where I usually am targeting running backs. You don't like anybody. We could take Ramondre after his big, or you want to go wide receiver?
I prefer, if we're going to take running back, it's Jaylen Warren, the most efficient, best player that out of the group. But personally, I think I like wide receiver tier.
Okay.
If we're going into the I guess this is the end of the running back dead zone at this point, but towards the we're still in what most people would consider that RB dead zone. I'm going for youth and talent to try to survive it. Sometimes the pure volume play does work, but that is really the origin of the running back dead zone, and why we try to avoid it is because we had projectable volume from mid-round running backs year after year after year, and we kept taking the bait. And mostly they were players who were, third tier on their offense, and they weren't necessarily valued by the coaches, and suddenly they're benched and, or injured, and it didn't work out as a cohort. We've seen Jaylen Warren be electric on the field. We've watched it happen, and that is the type of player that overcomes this part of the dead zone.
Yeah, absolutely. Jaylen Warren has been one of the running backs that I'm taking quite a bit of. With Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks is gone by the time it got to us. He would be another that I would consider there. How do you feel about Brooks this year?
I like him. The draft capital and the way the coaches have talked about him is good, but I don't know if I really want that many projected zeros from the running back position. It's a little bit different when I'm talking about, I can feel like I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth with a player like TJ Hawkinson, who likely takes a bunch of zeros, and we take, I talked.
It's a lot later though.
Highly of him.
Much later pick.
And it's also, I have a higher guarantee of Hawkinson being valuable with assumed health. And while a second round running back will get solid touches for his team, what does Carolina look like as a team in week 7 or 8 when he's finally rounding the corner into that player you want? I'm not saying I'm avoiding him. I'm fine with him this year, but I'm not going out of my way to get him in that tier.
So I will say, Thaddeus says, the running back dead zone starts at round 12. That's kind of how that's honestly how I've been treating it. So it's man, you're scaring me with a lot of your takes today because I've been typically like doing a lot of zero RB where I'm taking these guys that you don't like here. So I mean Jalen Warren you like, so I'm glad to hear that. But I also like taking Zach Moss. It's like he's likely and as you say, like you lay out the case for why he's a dead zone running back is that we don't really believe in the talent all that much. It is just like, well, he's a starting running back on Cincinnati most likely, so I'll make that bet where he's going in drafts. But you lay out a
It's
good
like
case.
the Thomas Rawls corollary or the Toby Gerhart corollary. I can think of like, just being a football fan, I can think of both of those players having RB1 fantasy weeks and having these highlight plays where they're trucking people and running over people. And frankly, from the eye test standpoint, in those brief moments, I think those players are good. And that's why we use stats to try to overcome those things. But then it's really hard when you also include the projectable volume that these mid-round running backs also have. The fact of the matter is, I like Zach Moss when I look at the prospect profile. I saw him perform pretty well. What do the coaches really think about it when the team isn't getting more than 3.5 yards per carry in week 6? How does it change? How do they involve Chase Brown? How do they alter things in a way that they wouldn't with a player like, I don't know, Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia if he was rushing for 3.5 yards a carry through 6 games?
Right. So you think there's a higher likelihood of somebody like Zach Moss being supplanted as opposed to somebody like Saquon Barkley because he doesn't have the same pedigree?
Actually, I'm going to say that the reason why the dead zone fails is there's multiple reasons why it happens. So I don't know why it happens, but we know it. They often fail. And that's why we avoid them as a cohort. And we try to just find the ones that are the most talented and can succeed in that, despite that. Let's see what we got going on.
All right, I have a couple thoughts here. We'll see what Capon does. He takes our guy Shakir. Mike Williams is there for the week 12 if we want him.
I do not hate that pick at all.
It is another. We have 3 by week 12 wide receivers already.
We scroll up a little bit in here.
So if we hit by wide receiver ADP, it's Mike Williams, AD Mitchell, Jacoby Myers.
I don't hate Jacoby Myers or Wicks here, especially if you think Adams maybe isn't the first rounder he's always been.
How do you feel about Judy? Because we do have Amari Cooper. We could build for a late round Deshaun Watson. I don't know.
I haven't done it a lot this year, but maybe they found something with Flacco at quarterback that they can actually replicate with Watson. In the same way that we bet, let's do it. Let's do Judy and say that, okay, just like the Chargers were the team last time, as we think Vegas is undervaluing them. Same thing. Cleveland is actually 2 spots ahead of the Chargers in terms of team projected points, right around league average. We're saying now, okay, there's something there that they figured out. They're going to be ahead and maybe 10th in total points. And with that, we're probably now pushing Deshaun Watson up in our rankings, and maybe he's the only other quarterback we get if the ADP proposition works out for us.
I think it would make sense if we have Josh Allen. I think if we get Deshaun Watson, to me that would be a 2 quarterback build most likely. So I would not hate that. Yeah, I like. So this is abnormal for me to have. We have 3 wide receivers with the week 12 bye week and 3 with the week 10 bye week. So we do have sort of both of those bye weeks covered. Just kind of interesting that way, but we are.
And we get them all for all the other weeks. It's just one of those things where I'm not sure we can quantify if it's really that bad. So I just have trouble caring because I haven't seen solid evidence that it should be wholly avoided. Love to be proved wrong.
So I think there have been some, there has been some research that has indicated that it's at least somewhat bad. But yeah, I agree with you. Like there is a limit to how bad. Like I probably focus on it. I probably over focus on it in part because I don't have like major player takes. Like if I had stronger player takes where it's like I clearly like this player better than that player, they have the same ADP, I'm going to get my guy every time. Whereas I'm like players around the same ADP. I have some player takes, but I also a lot of times it's just like it's a good tiebreaker. Just like you do the week 17 as a tiebreaker, you do the bye weeks as a tiebreaker. So it is something that I focus on, but I'm willing to sacrifice bye weeks sometimes if you
And
need
you're
help.
doing like I think that's the right answer. When in doubt, lean into the structural choices and the correlation
Right.
choices we know get us closer to the right answer. Because all we can do, right, is we're just carving out little bits of value here and there.
Yep. We were talking about the Bills, so I did want to ask you Mike Bolduck's question. Mike Bolduck, who famously has, I think, like 80% Chase Claypool on his teams, wants to know your take on Chase Claypool. Oh, you were muted.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. I also I saw the question. Chase Claypool. Hey, he's my least value of the group, but I don't think he's undraftable.
In the
I
18th round.
I think we're talking about a player who might have run his NFL course if things go awry here. So that's the type of downside we're talking about. It's a bummer because the physical tools appear to be there, but what was it? They just had some media video with all the wide receivers getting love, but no love for Chase Claypool.
Oh, is
And
that right?
I think I saw something on Twitter today that said something of the like. But again, we're talking. I said this before. We're talking about 1 to 2 usable weeks. That means Chase Claypool has one of those days and then doesn't show up for the rest of the year. We can all see that in his range of outcomes.
Right. Yeah, that could work out. Who is the other? They have a second late wide receiver who I've taken some. Oh, it's Mac Hollins, also there in Buffalo, who has been.
Yep.
I've taken more Mac Hollins than Chase. I haven't taken a ton of either of them, but I've also taken some shares of Mac Hollins late.
I love that. I love that. Again, and especially when you want to just tack on correlation. Great. What if they have 2 injuries? And what if Keon Coleman just takes some time and they need Matt Collins to play more often? Like that guy played a lot in Miami when Ryan Fitzpatrick was there. He was on the field in Oakland/Las Vegas as well. Was he? He was in Atlanta too.
Yep.
For those pretty awful teams. So I think it's okay to say like we don't really know if he is still capable, and the investment is so low anyway. That, absolutely fine with that.
Yep. All right, we are coming back on our pick. We are sitting at 2 running backs so far, so we might want to do something about that. We've got 6 receivers, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end. We could probably wait until the next turn, although I have twice over the past couple days been sniped trying to build out a double stack for Cleveland and then having Deshaun Watson go to an unstacked team. So it could happen again, but hopefully not. We could reach and take Deshaun Watson here.
Am I crazy if we did a unique what if we did something where we say, okay, Cleveland is actually the secondary stack you want, and we can grab somebody like Ford or Chubb.
Yep.
And then we say like 2 of those guys are the guys you needed in week 17. And then it frees us up from a quarterback standpoint to not need that. Because I kind of like the other positions here, but I realize we do probably need 1 more running back. I also like the idea of tapping quarterback in this range and then just being done.
Who else do you like here besides Ford?
I actually like Tua this year. I think that we are underestimating him based on the amount of running back touchdowns the team had. We're still talking about a team that's just below Buffalo in terms of total points.
Would you take Tua unstacked here, and take like a late Jonnu or something?
Happy to do it. Happy to do it. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to cue that one up.
And I think this is the Jahan Dotson breakout year would be my second choice.
Ooh. All right, I'm gonna do Jahan Dotson first because that's I have like 0 Jahan Dotson.
Love it.
So now we still have the Cleveland out. We could still do Deshaun Watson on this team if he comes back to us. We could take 2 of there and just hope for it's we have no outs that I love outside of Jonnu late on Miami. So it was like man, we could do that now. And he has fallen a little bit, but he will fall. Tua falls pretty frequently.
Yeah, and part of it is one thing that I've come to realize is that these quarterback runs are not just expected, but they're a little bit rational. Like, it's time from a structural standpoint for all of these teams. It's time from a positional value standpoint where the quarterback's projection looks so different than the running back, wide receiver, tight end projection. And so, even if from a structural standpoint, I don't need a quarterback, I actually kind of like participating in the run if everything else lines up. Like, I like the player, I like the team total. We're talking about Miami again, a top 5 team in projected points, who had a ton of running back touchdowns last year. We could theoretically see that switch over to the passing game, especially with players like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So not only do I like kind of participating in that, you can theoretically hurt another team while doing that, and still go with the correlations later on, like we've been talking about. I feel like in this case, the Jahan Dotson player take overtook that, and that's just a fine choice as well.
I didn't even realize that you were trying to set up a Miami Cleveland. That is interesting because we do have so many Cleveland pieces. We could have gone Tua and then tried to build on a back stack. Yeah, now I see what you were saying. I was hesitant because I didn't totally understand the vision there until just now that you were trying to do the Tua with Cleveland thing. But I like we can just do a Cleveland primary stack. Still gives us the Jonnu Smith as a bring back. So I don't hate the way the direction this is going.
We got options.
Yep.
And remember, 12th round, this is the $1 players. We have no idea. We have no idea from here on out. So
yeah, exactly. But also I've taken like 0 Jahan Dotson except for when I have Jaden Daniels. So I'm curious why you are a Jahan Dotson truther.
Well, I do think we're still in that range where if a mid to high round pick is going to, or actually mid to early round NFL draft pick is going to break out, it usually happens in their first 3 seasons. And it usually happens when the quarterback position has been solidified, which are 2 possibilities that still exist here for Washington. I love Jaden Daniels as a pick. I actually was surprised. I'm not gonna say I'm a watch the film bro all of a sudden, but I was actually surprised at just how solid of a passer he was with BTJ and neighbors on the field. Like this guy wanted to stay in the pocket, but when he broke out of the pocket, it was like good luck catching him. If you could compare it to somebody like last generation, like Robert Griffin III, just from a where this quarterback wants to attack a defense standpoint, just a very different player. And I think this is now my player take, that they have an offense that can support 2 wide receivers if that quarterback plays like he looked like on film. I mean, he literally supported 2 first-round wide receivers just a season ago. First-round NFL draft capital. But I like Daniels as a prospect, as a fantasy pick, and therefore I also like McLaurin and Dotson at ADP.
I love Daniels as a pick. I've been taking a lot of McLaurin as a result, and Dotson for me has not, been part of that grouping for me. But he has been some because I like Jaden Daniels. Sometimes I'll take him when I don't have Terry McLaurin, and then throw Jahan Dotson on there. So I think I'm probably underweight on Jahan Dotson, but I do take him from time to time when I have Jaden Daniels. I don't think I've taken him like at all when I don't have either Atlanta or Washington stacks. So this will be the rare throw Jahan Dotson. Good to get some exposure elsewhere. And I think you make a really good point that it could be like, maybe Jaden Daniels just opens him up. Maybe this is the situation there where he does take a big step
we're making
forward.
Thaddeus Brown happy in chat.
I know. Well, Thaddeus
has
got
lots of Dotson.
Yeah,
and lots of Browns, lots of Judy. Awesome. Good. Glad we got people on our side here.
Yeah. Thaddeus will let you know if he likes your pick or he dislikes your pick. He's going to let you know.
Awesome.
All right. We get our guy. I shouldn't call him our guy. We hate him. We don't feel good about this pick. Disclaimer. He's not our guy, but he makes sense for this team.
Not our guy. No. And I do like that. And then from here, Musgrave is okay. We have only 1 tight end at this point.
We do.
So it's definitely time to consider it now that we're past the dozen round point.
We don't have to because we did take hits early. We could. So to me, it'd be Musgrave. We talked about how much we like Jaleel McLaughlin as a pick. Could make sense for this team. If you like.
So the way I kind of feel about things is I think we still are way behind at tight end, personally.
Even
When
with
I
Kyle
look at
Pitts.
I do think that, based on how I see the position, I still think that we're looking at 50% of our games without a usable week from the tight end, just because of the variance of the position. That's what we've seen from the tight end 5 or 6. We've only seen like 5, maybe 7 games of usability in a typical year from this part of the draft. That's why, or from Pitts' part of the draft. That's why I still feel like we're behind compared to a pick like Kelsey, where we get closer to that at least in the mid tier, like 8 or 9 usable weeks, where
Right.
truly, like, if we piece together a couple of usable weeks at the end of the draft, we're done. We've got most of our weeks covered.
So at this point, so we have Pitts and Musgrave. Would you be inclined to take another tight end late?
Yeah.
So you're just really big on like
at least in
low
terms
cost
of like trying
tight
to
end.
find usability.
I have not heard many people make the
No,
case
I think I
for.
just like generally.
Okay.
I think, in the same way that the tool that you're using tries to use the historical data to place your positions in buckets, I'm essentially going about the same task a different way, where I'm trying to. We know in a perfect world we would have 17 usable weeks from every position in our starting lineup, from quarterback, from tight end, from running back, wide receiver, and we know functionally that every single team is going to fall short of that overall goal. The goal is to get close enough so that the numbers say, from an expected value point, you at least got as close as you could. And the way I'm seeing it is we've only actually hit an expected value of 5 to 7 usable weeks when we say Kyle Pitts is our tight end 1.
Sure. Okay.
Which means we still got to make up for it. And we probably have to do it through multiple players and not just one. Now, I'm going to take 5 tight ends? No, I'm not going to do that. But I am going to try to get closer to that 100% than just Pitts alone gets me.
Okay. So we are thinking maybe another. Would you take 2 more tight ends on top of Pitts and Musgrave?
I probably wouldn't take them right now in this double tap, but
maybe
absolutely not opposed to take 2 tight ends over the last 4 rounds. I still I believe it was our old boss Alex Baker who wrote about the value of quarterbacks in final rounds. I still am a truther there. It's the only positional spot on the board where you can start to reasonably look at 1 to 2 usable weeks as an expectation. No other position gives you that in the 18th round. And those are obvious reasons, right? We know that the 32nd, 33rd quarterback, they're usually ones that get in the game at some point. Yeah. Whereas the tight end that goes in the 18th round literally sometimes doesn't get in games. That's just kind of how it goes.
I took plenty of those last. I shouldn't say didn't get in games, but didn't have any usable. Didn't get into my lineups. Those types of tight ends late last year. So I hear you on that for sure. So I seem to recall. I feel like Alex put something out at one point saying that he would recommend only 2 quarterbacks in an 18-round draft. And maybe I'm misremembering his feeling overall on quarterbacks. For a while, I was only doing 2 quarterback builds. Now I feel like there's been some data suggesting 3 recently. So maybe that was just a response to the first year of Best Ball Mania.
I can't say I remember the research right off, like exactly.
Yeah.
And it really has to do with what I'm seeing, what is available in the 18th rounds at the other positions, where pretty much the usable week expectation is 0 to 1 for everyone else. So,
yep. All right.
So we probably do want some correlation picks. Like we're balancing all of these aspects all at once. I actually probably value correlation more than get all the usable weeks you can at tight end. I'm just not opposed to using that as my optimization metric. Yeah,
and I have some thoughts, and 2 of the players that I was going to target. Well, there was not really much of a chance that Malachi Corley was going to make it back to us. That was the dream. I kind of thinking back on, I'm like, man, we could have gone Malachi Corley, but I think Luke Musgrave was a good pick. I like Luke Musgrave where he goes in drafts, but Braylon Allen going at 175, that one hurts a little bit. I wouldn't mind a Braylon Allen as a correlation with our Josh Allen team. I have at least a
I like
thought
Troy
here.
Franklin this year too.
Do you like Franklin better than
Yeah,
Marvin
I mean,
Mims?
I have to say, like, I have strong feelings about these running backs, but it's one of the areas where, like, this is the attempted growth for me is like I just know nothing about 14th round running backs, and I have to be honest with myself.
All right. The good news is we can cover multiple bases with Jonnu Smith as a correlation piece, run back for Deshaun Watson, and gives us a third tight end. How do you feel about that?
I like it. I like
And
it.
then,
I think that's our easy start.
are
Okay.
there any Jets players that we like at the back of drafts with Braylon Allen off the board? I don't really think so. not anybody that I feel like clicking.
Yeah,
We could
man,
add on
they're
another
starting, they're
Bills
starting to really
receiver.
go.
Probably don't need to yet.
Yeah,
We
what
do
do we
have
have there for
we have
Buffalo?
two more picks. It'll be the Chase Claypool, Matt Collins. Should we do another running back here or
Yeah, honestly, I like Chuba Hubbard this year with the uncertainty in Carolina. What if he is the just a guy who plays well enough to keep a role throughout the year?
yeah?
It's just not a lot he has to get past, especially when Brooks is not on the field.
Yeah, I think Chuba Hubbard, somebody I haven't drafted a ton of, but like I definitely see the case for it of like, yeah, he's probably the starter to start the year. And like that's pretty valuable just in terms of getting you some points at the beginning of the year. And who knows, maybe he will retain some role later on. Um, let's figure out what we need to target here. So we have at quarterback, Josh Allen and Deshaun Watson. At running back, Josh Jacobs, Jalen Warren, Jerome Ford, Chuba Hubbard. At wide receiver, Drake London, Chris Olave, Amari Cooper, Curtis Samuel, Jacoby Myers, Jerry Judy, Jahan Dotson, and a tight end, Kyle Pitts, Luke Musgrave, Jonnu Smith. Pretty clearly, I think we need at least one more running back. Um, I would say we're done at quarterback. What positions do you think we need the most here?
Uh, what quarterbacks are still here? Just out of curiosity, what quarterbacks remain?
Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Bo Nix, the Pittsburgh guys, Minshew slash AOC.
I like Daniel Jones at the end of drafts because he's a runner. Um, I know it's not correlated. I know we don't need it, but if we're really strained, I don't think it's a bad pick. I like Luke McCaffrey, but typically in drafts where I didn't draft Jahan Dotson,
Yeah, gosh.
because I don't feel like we're going to suddenly support three wide receivers in Washington. Roshan Johnson, for all the same reasons we like Khalil Herbert, the upside conversation is almost exactly the same for Roshan Johnson in
True.
Chicago. I think I like him in terms of running backs. Can you scroll down on the running back board a little bit?
Yeah, let's take a look. All right, so
there he goes. Estime is still there.
I don't hate Deontay Foreman as a bet against Chubb. Like I mostly am taking Jerome Ford, and actually we took Ford on this team.
We took Ford, so I wouldn't love that.
Alexander, I don't love Alexander Madison. I for a little bit bought in because he is probably the RB2 there, but they've been referring to him as like a depth piece, so I don't think I want to go too in there.
What about Keaton Mitchell? I know he's coming back from injury, but boy, was that tape that really just completely jumped off the screen. I mean, he was completely electric. There's less competition if he can get back. Good offense, high projected points.
I know Blake is going to like this, and Blake asked a question. Blake has streamed with me earlier this week or last week, and he loves Keaton Mitchell as a late round pick. So all of my Keaton Mitchell exposure has been in the drafts that I've done with Blake. Blake did ask you this question: how are you playing the Patriots wide receiver room? Do you have any thoughts there?
I am aiming to be at or below ADP, mostly because I don't have any strong conviction about the talent, and Vegas says they're going to score the least amount of points. My hot take about New England is that they go slow with Drake May. I know that there are other people saying that Jacoby Brissett may end up being the starter. I think this might be like a 2-year project for New England. So I know it's a new regime, a new draft regime, a new player evaluation process for New England, and that's probably a good thing. But we have seen second round receivers flame out time and time again. and I legitimately hope I'm wrong. I hope that we no longer have a graveyard for wide receivers, but the answer to which New England receiving option you wanted has been none for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, last year it definitely was. I don't remember. 2 years ago was Juju there too, or was he on the Chiefs 2 years ago? Yeah,
Chiefs
it's been a couple
2 years
of years
ago. Yeah.
They had Jacoby Myers. Oh, but
Yep.
Jacoby Myers didn't score any touchdowns that year, so it was like he could have been
exactly.
good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I like Polk as a right. That's who their second round.
Yeah, Jalen Polk. They drafted Javon Baker also. Yeah, Polk was their early.
They're just really hard to bet on, and we're not as good at turning prospect profiles into surefire hits in year one as we think we would like to be at this point in the NFL advanced metrics lifespan.
Yeah. CEH, another guy that I sometimes take late as just he's the RB2 on the Chiefs, just bet on the team. You mentioned Keaton Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a name there. I take some Will Shipley from time to time when you don't take Saquon Barkley, maybe bet on the rookie that some people think is very talented.
That's an interesting idea. I don't have a ton of that. And again, true, like talk about scroll the F down. The answer to who you can take in 18 is just like you can scroll down and just place your finger if you truly want. I think Keaton is a really nice pick.
I'm good with taking
Jones
Keaton.
Just sitting there as a quarterback at the end there because I think we're a little behind in usable weeks.
Do you think so with Josh Allen and Deshaun Watson? We spent so much on Josh Allen. It's tough for me to click it uncorrelated. We could though if you really want to do that.
It almost feels a little bit like an insurance policy in a way because what we're really saying with Josh Allen is this team expects a quarterback 1 week from its roster.
Yeah,
we're rushing each time, and when that doesn't happen, we have a problem. We need the correlations from the Cleveland side. So I just see Daniel Jones as more optionality to get that thing that we need to lock in place from a floor standpoint for the rest of this lineup construction to work.
All right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it for you. So okay, my only concern there is our running back room just scares me here. But we did get a falling Josh Jacobs.
We're so talented. What do you mean?
We've got the anchor RB. We do have Jalen Warren. It's just five running backs were our third running back taken. Our fourth running back taken was pick 181, and our third was 132. It feels like we didn't spend a ton in terms of draft capital at running back. So that scares me a little bit. But I'm happy to get a little bit weird. So we got a little bit weird taking the unstacked Daniel Jones. As you said, he has rushing upside. They could be a place where they're spreading the ball around quite a bit. So could get there without any wide receivers totally going off. So we're not dead to the teams that stacked him up.
I can tell as you're trying to convince yourself.
I'm trying to convince myself.
We've made a grave mistake is going through. That's the subtext I'm hearing.
No. Dean says Daniel Jones could get you 70
rushes.
I have seen Daniel Jones try to have a long run, and he just face planted like 5 yards short of the goal line, as I recall. Do you remember that play? The Daniel Jones long rush.
That is an unforgettable whiff. I believe it was a Thursday Night Football. I also think there's some truth to this with a tournament as big as BBM is. I think the winning lineups often feel a little crunchy. They feel a little uncomfortable. They have sanity at the top, right? Like the winner had CeeDee Lamb last year, but there was probably areas of the draft, and I haven't done gone into the weeds yet, but there were probably areas of the draft where it was the unorthodox pick or a series of unorthodox picks that actually led the winner or the high value drafters to their overall wins. And so as long as we're in the realm of normal and we're thinking about all the things we need to think about, correlations, bye weeks, bringbacks, all the typical DFS aspects that we know we need to bring in my opinion, being uncomfortable within that within those parameters is actually a good thing. That's the whole scroll the F down motto.
Sure. Yeah, to me, it's just stacking my quarterback is like is a parameter that I set always also. So that would be like as we're setting the parameters of like what you need, but we do have two stack quarterbacks. So like, as you say, maybe Daniel Jones just has that one 30-point game in a week where other two quarterbacks don't do much. That's what you need. You get 20 points of value from him, something like that. And that's enough to advance you. You get there, whatever. So yeah, from an advancement standpoint, he may have been the pick that we end up needing. I don't think that Daniel Jones unstacked is likely to be what you need in the playoffs, but it
How
could
dare
happen.
you?
It could happen. It could happen. You've laid out the reasoning. Thaddeus did not like our running back, so he is back. He's mad at us now. After he was in for a while in the last draft. Thaddeus is mad at us again for the.
Or what if he's saying that
disrespect.
the disrespect to the talent of our RB room
Oh,
is real?
that could be
Because we
that
do
could be
have
what he means.
some very solid in terms of like what I've actually seen on the field from these players. I have watched each of these players have RB1 caliber performances. Again, we need that to happen. That's all we can do when we're at pick 180 picking an RB3, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate you you getting weird with me. This was a blast.
That was a fun draft. Also, Who Hames is mad at us. He says, Hobie Matt didn't talk you into dimes. He did take Wandale Robinson, I noticed. Yeah. All right, I'll read off the team. So we have Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones at quarterback, Josh Jacobs, Jalen Warren, Jerome Ford, Chuba Hubbard, Keaton Mitchell at running back. At wide receiver, we have Drake London, Chris Olave, Amari Cooper, Curtis Samuel, Jacoby Myers, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson. At tight end, Kyle Pitts, Luke Musgrave, Jonnu Smith. We've got the correlations with Josh Allen and Curtis Samuel. We don't have any Jets bringbacks on that one. We also have Deshaun Watson with Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy. We got the Jonnu bringback on that one. We also have Jerome Ford as part of that stack. So somewhat correlated. We've at least correlated two of our three quarterbacks. We've got, I think outside of I'm slightly uncomfortable with the running back room, but that's the only room that I'm like a little bit. And as you said, like, you got to get a little bit uncomfortable in some of these. So not the end of the world. Another old friend in chat, Nick, comes.
Oh, Nick, what's up, buddy?
Nick, another former Stochastic guy.
Hope you're well, man.
I think you're just whatever. We don't need to talk about that. Savoca, do you need to get going? I was going to say we could see if people want us to read off their teams, but if you don't have time, we can.
Yeah, no, let's go through it. I got a few minutes here. Yeah.
All right. If any of you want us to take a look at your teams, we will do that fairly quickly. I'll address it since we have a couple of minutes waiting for people. The whole wide receiver early thing is disrespectful. RBs, our king is Thaddeus. Thaddeus has been pounding that drum in every stream draft for weeks now. So to me, I would like a study, Matt, at some point on when running backs, how often early running backs actually end up working out in terms of being the most valuable. So like how often a top 5 drafted running back ends up in the top 5 at the position relative to like wide receivers with the same parameters. I'm sure that study has been done. My thinking, so like the whole thought process behind zero RB is a lot of the time you have running backs get hurt, and the late round running backs have a clearer path to being good than late round wide receiver. So it's like wide receiver talent matters a lot more. Running back, a lot of it is about opportunity. So it's easier to get a big hit on a late running back than it is to get a big hit on a late wide receiver. So that's why we do zero RB, because you get your hits. Like the good wide receivers most of the time are taken early. Obviously there are Puka Nacua, Tank Dell. There's exceptions to those rules, but a lot more frequently you get big hits with running backs late. That's why we do the zero RB thing. It's not because we hate the early running backs. It's because you can usually replace the values of a great running back later more often than a late receiver. I, however, have not actually done any study that supports this. That's just my philosophy. That's the reason a lot of us do zero RB. How do you feel about zero RB?
Let me see if I can refer back to like the original, like Sean Siegel's original article from RotoViz, if people are remembering. He kind of introduced the concept that there were other articles back then, but it's been refined since then. The main thing this stems from is the fact that running backs on a week-to-week basis are the most projectable. That's what I think people are not forgetting, or they're actually leaning into when they talk about running backs are king. That's that's kind of the truth, right? Because we know what it can look like when Christian McCaffrey is projected for 5 fantasy points more than every other
Yeah.
flex player in the entire slate. And that happens a lot during DFS weeks. What really comes down to is the uncertainty we have when we are projecting on a season long basis, which is what we're doing when we're drafting. And we know that wide receivers that have high ADPs. And remember, ADP is just essentially a proxy for expected opportunity and expected efficiency. Those are the only things we have. We know that wide receivers at the top of drafts are the ones that dominate in terms of opportunity compared to wide receivers at the end of drafts. And there is a clear path, like you were saying, for late round running backs at the end of drafts to become higher projected opportunity backs. We do not have that corollary at other positions. One area where it is starting to happen, though, and I should mention this, is tight end.
Ooh.
We had a very interesting year last year where Zach Ertz and Trey McBride were kind of cannibalizing each other at the beginning of the season. Both were actually playing decently, and then the moment Zach Ertz left, boom, it was like the light switch went on for Trey McBride, and he was the number one option. I actually wrote an article last year saying that both Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid were going to be league winners, both of them. At the same week, Dawson Knox had surgery, and Zach Ertz was injured and eventually got moved. They both were absolute smash picks in the way that we see with running back handcuffs. So I'm willing to stay water here, and if we see the numbers change. The other aspect, and I don't want to go too far into this, Neil, is like the big issue with how that study needs to be structured is sample size. Because if we go back too short of a time, just like the history of Best Ball Mania, we're basically just looking at how well did CMC do.
Right.
We're basically just like saying, how well did these 3 running backs we keep drafting in the first round with a little bit of player variance, how well did they do? And that's not fair. And if we go too far back, we're basically saying, how well did Sean Alexander and Priest Holmes and
with 25 carries a game too? Yeah.
I can tell you they did well.
Yeah.
I can assure you. And so a lot of this, and this has been talked about ad nauseum, has to do with the talent level of the position. When we saw Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson, cause a resurgence in the mid 2010s with the running backs, we'll stay water to that. But right now, the wide receiver S tier, whatever you want to call it, is just undeniably great. And that running back S tier falls off into the A tier, if I can use gamer lingo, quicker than the wide receivers do. That's really the be all end all. Plus, we've got that extra chance at the end of drafts to make up for it.
I love that point about the sample size being difficult there, because it is like the recent years have been so different than past years where it was just like, yeah, you've got your bell cow and then you've got the backup. Like that was for years. It was like in fantasy football. Yeah. You take running backs early, hammer running backs early, take running backs late. Like all the projectable guys are running backs. That's just not the case anymore. Now it's like every backfield is split. So we have a very small sample size to work with. And like you said, it's just, it is hard to figure out the right sample size to look at ADP versus how they actually do. Like how far back do you go? I don't know what the answer is exactly. That is a good call out there.
One more hot take is that we are underestimating what the return rule changes are going to do for historical data.
Okay.
In the same way that I just was talking about sample size. So I think the best answer when you're looking at running back is to go back to the most recent CBA change. The 2011 CBA changed the way that teams valued certain positions. That's my favorite sample size to use for the running back. It captures the Jamal Charleses. It captures a lot of good players, but it doesn't go all the way back to the LaDainian Tomlinson years. On top of that, I think some of our historical data will change drastically if we see a 40 to 50% increase in returns and star players or highly talented players who get large opportunities elsewhere get return opportunities. Maybe some of the touchdowns shift. I know, Underdog doesn't have return yardage, but if someone breaks off two or three of these runs in the return game, suddenly they become an everyday player. Rashid Shaheed is a great example of this, where he had a special teams play and a bomb of a touchdown, and suddenly he's an every down player. And you know, great players often start on special teams. Antonio Brown famously was on a stacked wide receiver room where all he could do was return punts. I think that's going to change our data equation soon enough.
Yeah, I can't remember which coach in the NFL was saying it, but they were saying like I think that every team is going to have star players returning kicks next year because like it's just more valuable now than it has
McDaniel,
ever been.
Miami.
McDaniel said that. Yeah, it was McDaniel. Yeah, that's an interesting. Had not thought about that aspect of it. Definitely interesting. In my mind, it also like increases their injury risk, but I don't know if that's a real thing. Like I think of kickoffs being so dangerous, like because they're running head, full head of steam. It makes me nervous every time if I have a player who is returning a kick. But it doesn't actually seem to happen as much as I expect it to. Injuries on kickoffs.
Yeah, knock on wood.
All right, King of QC, we will take a look at your team. He also wanted your thoughts on 2 running backs from the same team. Did he do it here? Doesn't look like he did it on this particular team. Oh, he did with Seattle. Well, I'll read off the team, then we can get into it. Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Bo Nix at quarterback. At running back, he has Kenneth Walker, Javonte Williams, Chase Brown, Zach Charbonnet, Ray Davis, Braylon Allen. At wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Debo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, Cortland Sutton, Jalen McMillan, and a tight end, Travis Kelce and Mike Gesicki. What do you think of this?
Yo, team old wide receiver and tight end. Here we go. I mean, this is like a ton of talent with Debo and Amon-Ra on top.
Yeah,
I mentioned that I still think Hopkins has one more year in him. If I believe that, then the 31-year-old Cooper Kupp gets the same grace, especially with the fact that he was decent despite battling through lower leg injuries. What were the quarterback situation here?
So he's got, I'll read off the correlate. He's got Jared Goff with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Looks like just single stacked. He does have the Debo bring back on that one. No running backs there. And then he has Matthew Stafford with Cooper Kupp. No Arizona there. Yep. And then he
I
has,
would have liked another 18th round or like late round correlation pickup, but I say that having just picked an unstacked Daniel Jones in the 18th round, so we can't win it all every pick. I think that your wide receiver and tight end room is excellent. I will say I don't really like same team tight end or same team running back unless I just happen to end up with the second one at the end of the draft.
Kenneth Walker.
You're really threading the needle. You're really saying like, okay, Kenneth Walker is the guy you needed weeks 1 through X, and Charbonnet is the guy you needed week X through the end. And that just feels like a lot of things that have to go right. It's not impossible. It's just a lot of draft capital for only one of them to work, to really only guarantee that one of them works at a time.
Is that specific to this team? Like if we have the Steelers, is Thaddeus gives the example, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, could it work out when you're taking both of them in like the 8th round, 8th, 9th round?
The answer is there are outliers, yes. I mean, we talked about it earlier in the stream. The Saints had 2 running backs that you wanted to start from the same team. I mean, it happens, but we're talking about 2 running backs being every week starter is like a once every 3 seasons kind of thing. And I don't know the exact numbers there, but we're not even talking about one team in a season having every week starters. The Steelers are a great choice to be that team, and I believe they did that some weeks last year, but it's really hard to pick that team year to year.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we had anybody else wanting us to review their team, so we're going to end the reviews there. That's interesting. Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. I figured they were going to make changes there in OKC. They got to use those picks somehow.
I actually really like that. Caruso, great defender.
Yeah, it's a good.
Need the ball in his hands to be effective. I think. I think Giddey had run his course in Oklahoma City anyway. I think that seems like a good move. Yeah,
that does seem like a good move. Giddey, I thought was going to be one of their stars, and this year just in the playoffs, he was kind of played off the court a little bit. Caruso definitely doesn't seem like he's going to be played off the court. Does seem valuable to that team. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
People can find me at Draftaholic on X/Twitter, and also feel free to try out the tool at scrollthefdown.life. Live the scroll the F down life. It will probably break. It's probably already broken. Please message me if you need any help. I hope we get to do this a bunch, and I hope to see you not only the oldest but the winningest Best Ball Mania 5 drafter after all is said and done.
Yeah. Me too. I hope the same thing. Yeah, I'd love to have you back on sometime. Do some more of these drafts throughout the summer. Really appreciate you coming on, Matt. Really appreciate everybody else hanging out with us, drafting with us. This was a lot of fun. Go follow Matt on Twitter at Draftaholic. Does a lot of content throughout the NFL season. I can throw the link in the description for you to that tool that Matt made. Thank you all for hanging out, and we will. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I've got a subscriber goal trying to get to 2,000. Got a few hundred left to go. Thanks, guys.
Let's go.